and also defined as an established high-level player who will exceed his prior performance and expectations as measured by average draft position going into the season. So forgive me if I'm breaking the rules or bending the rules a little bit here, because not everybody on this list is already an established high-level player. Not all of them have even played a full season at the NFL level, but all of them, in my opinion at least, are in spots to absolutely crush their ADP and put you in that money come December. So I'm Dave Lochran from Awesemo.com. Let's talk about it. My favorite later round breakouts, talking really 10th round or later, that I think can crush for you this season. If you like this content, hit that thumbs up. Helps me out in a huge way. And subscribe to the channel as well. Let's get started. Darnell Mooney didn't get a ton of hype during his rookie season, but that was mostly because of players like Justin Jefferson, Chase Claypool, and CeeDee Lamb having huge games and making draw-dropping plays each week. Even T. Higgins was on pace for a big year before Joe Burrow went down. But Mooney definitely wasn't bad, finishing with 61 receptions for 631 yards and 4 touchdowns on 98 targets, all of which finished second at his position in Chicago behind Allen Robinson. You'd like to see him improve on a 62% reception rate, sure, but that's what happens when your quarterbacks are Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. Just to expand on that a little, here's an insane stat to illustrate just how bad Chicago quarterbacks were on deep attempts last year. Mooney was 15th in the entire league on targets of 20-plus yards, but 55th in receptions on those same plays. And according to PFF, none of those misses were drops on Mooney's part. 4 receptions on 23 targets is unacceptable. And while 7 of them were contested balls, of which Mooney only came down with 2, there's still no way we shouldn't be feeling better about his outlook for 2021, especially when Justin Fields takes over. That's the thing, though. Andy Dalton is not someone who's going to take Mooney's deep game to the next level, but Fields absolutely can. This could become a deadly connection, especially considering how often Mooney was getting open last year, only to have balls thrown at his feet or 10 rows up into empty seats. You're getting him at an ADP of 91 on Underdog, but in home leagues, you'll be able to pull Mooney way later. We're talking straight into the double-digit rounds. And late in the season, when we assume that Fields will already have been installed as the starter for quite some time now, it's going to be perfect to have Mooney on your roster. Irv Smith is coming into what many like to consider the make-or-break year for tight ends. He's posted modest production through his first 2 seasons with the Vikings, but could be primed for a breakout in 2021. Here's why. Kyle Rudolph is finally out of Minnesota, which is what makes Smith most appealing. Rudolph played more snaps than Smith in almost every game he was healthy, but Tyler Conklin is the only tight end behind him now. And while Smith's yardage totals weren't crazy in the 4 games Rudolph missed to close out the season, he did score 3 touchdowns on 6 red zone targets, which was tied for most in football at his position over that span. He was also on the field for 83% of snaps over the final 3 weeks, so there's reason to believe Smith's role could expand significantly in year 3. I'm definitely not enamored with the fact that Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, and Dalvin Cook are on this offense when it comes to Smith's projected workload, but he should definitely be the number 3 option in the passing game and potentially a lot more than that inside the red zone, which is exactly what we're looking for when targeting late-round tight ends, touchdown upside. And here's just one example of what Smith is capable of doing on end zone targets when they're contested. Smith has been fantastic in camp, both as a receiver and the blocker, which is what he'll need to stay on the field and make an impact. At an ADP of 127 and the 12th tight end off the board, you've got to feel good about getting him there, even if he hasn't quite proven yet that he can be that alpha tight end in this league. I don't think we need to be extremely excited about anyone on the Saints roster outside of Alvin Kamara, but Marquez Callaway deserves some attention based on his late-round ADP and absence of any real competition at the wide receiver position right now. Michael Thomas is going to be sidelined for a while, and while he might be ahead of schedule, as some reports have noted, it's still expected that Thomas will miss a good amount of time to start the year. And that's not even to mention the tension arising.
is really gloomy. What is going on, Awesemo fam? Welcome to the MLB Deeper Dive presented by One Jock Market. I am Eric Lindquist. I am right now being tortured by this early slate because pitching was something to behold for sure. I believe one Adam Scherer there on the other side at Ship My Money DFS, as you know him, in the DraftKings FanDuel streets, is feeling the exact same way as I am. But Adam, how's it going today?
Yeah, I think I'm a little more upset than you because you played the Rockies, I played the Padres, and the Rockies are doing much better right now. So, not enjoying this early slate too much. Pitching was absolutely brutal, but I like days we have two slates or three if there's a night slate because I can just do it all over again.
Yeah, I did not want to jam Tyler. I mean, I didn't expect Molly's ownership to be what it was, 75% plus in the $18, but
we had him on the show this morning with Josh. We had him at like 75%, and I kind of laughed at it. I was like, all right, that's probably crazy high. It's not going to be there, but it was there.
So there we go. Plug right away for Awesemo's data and tools. I mean, you can't beat that. The best ownership projections of the game. It is so volatile being able to try to put all of that together, but we've got the best guys behind the scenes putting that together every single day for you. Hit that like button for them, if not for Adam and myself. Hit the subscribe button. That goes a long way for us, and hit the notification bell. And again, we're sponsored by Jock Market. We've got a 10 gamer to kind of get to here, but anything that really sticks out to you now as opposed to what you had on the morning show for you?
The only thing I think that's really changed is we got Paul Blackburn now making the start for Oakland in place of Cole Irvin, all of Oakland starters being pushed back a day and Blackburn being called up from AAA. So that's a pretty big change just because he's Paul Blackburn and he's not Cole Irvin. So makes the White Sox look a little bit different. But other than that, I think everything's more or less the same. As far as I know, we haven't officially gotten a starting pitcher for the Dodgers yet. I think it's still expected to be Mitch White, but nothing confirmed on that front that I've seen.
We're having a lot of fun with the Dodgers lately, for sure, with some of these pitchers. Andre Jackson worked out great. That was probably the one thing I got right on Monday. We were going back and forth hoping that he was going to get some innings. And on that slate, you needed Miley, though, unfortunately, but it still worked out okay. Either way, let's get to it. We've got a bunch of games to get to. We'll talk a little bit about Jock Market here later. Also want to just bring up Betting You. We've got that on the front end of this show as well. Matt Gajewski, Ben Rasa. If you guys want to check out their podcast, you need to check out their podcast. The two sharpest college football minds you will find, whether it's winning Heisman's, whether it's winning the SEC championship, win like over under win totals. I was betting a couple of those when I was out in Vegas. You got to check it out. And they have new things coming out every Wednesday for that. Matt Gajewski, Ben Rasa, college football. What's better than that? There's less than a week away, or it's just over a week away until we have live college football. Very, very excited about it. So check it out. Spotify, Apple, go to the places where you get your podcasts, hit them up. You will love it. But either way, we're going to get to some baseball here. Right off the bat, we've got Boston at New York here. Two interesting pitchers because we can see some strikeouts from them. We can also see them get absolutely slaughtered, and these are two ridiculous lineups. So Nick Pivetta on one side for the Red Sox, 26.6% K percentage on the season. That's nifty. 373 expected slugging. Can give up a little bit of that hard contact. Fly ball pitcher against this team. Not a great thing to be, but how do you feel about Pivetta today?
So I'm mildly interested in Pivetta in tournaments. I wasn't really that interested this morning, but we've seen ownership kind of creep up on like every other pitcher in that price range except for Pivetta. And so it's kind of interesting because it's clearly a dangerous spot. The Yankees have a 5.2 implied run total. They're getting Anthony Rizzo back. They have Gary Sanchez back. So this lineup's getting a lot more formidable than it was, but there's still a lot of strikeouts in there. You know, once you get past LeMahieu and Rizzo, you can start piling up strikeouts from Judge, Gallo, Stanton, Odor, Sanchez. So the potential, I think, is there for Pivetta. It's not a really high probability spot, but given that he's projected for about 1% ownership on DraftKings, I think he's at least someone kind of to, have in your back pocket if you have a more popular stack, or two stacks together with popular hitting and you need a high upside pitcher that people aren't going to. I think Pivetta does offer that. He has an 11% chance of being a top two pitcher, only about 1% ownership, 26% strikeout percentage for the season, 1.3 home runs per nine, 4.32 xFIP, but he does at least have that strikeout stuff. So not someone that I'm prioritizing or planning to have tons of, but I do think he does fit builds where, maybe your hitters are a little bit more popular.
We don't have a MLB boom bust tool per se, like we do for NBA. But if we did, I think facing the Yankees, definitely a boom bust spot pretty much every single time for a K pitcher, especially a fly ball pitcher. No?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of, I think you and I had talked about it when the Yankees first made that trade for Joey Gallo in particular, but it was just like for the rest of the season, it's going to be like play the Yankees when people aren't playing them because they have so much power, and then play strikeout pitchers against the Yankees when people are playing the Yankees because they're going to still strike out a lot.
Yeah, 33.8% K percentage on Joey Gallo. I've always just kind of highlighted him as the guy who's going to miss a lot. He's also, when he makes contact, going to hit the ball into the stratosphere. Andrew Heaney on the other side of this one. Ooh, yeah, he's probably the most frustrating pitcher on planet Earth. Better K percentage even than Pivetta, 28% K percentage. But looking at this Boston lineup, I mean, it's just murderer's row. They ended up not putting in Schwarber. I'm curious how he's going to kind of fit into this lineup on certain days, because it seems as though it's going to be Duran in some of these spots, or Verdugo, in the 7-hole here today. 3.1K for him. Some of these lefties, but he gives it up to both sides. And so I got to think that Boston, a really good spot to target here today.
Yeah, I like the Boston bats. I mean, Heaney also, it's a boom bust spot for him, just like we said it was for Pivetta. The thing that makes me like Pivetta a little bit more, though, is just that I think there's more strikeouts in the Yankees lineup than there is in the Boston lineup. Heaney has struck out 30.3% of the right-handed hitters that he's faced this year. So he's certainly capable of going out there and racking them up. But the Red Sox aren't going to make it easy for him. He's allowed a 240 ISO to right-handed hitters, 193 expected ISO. And you have so much right-handed power in this lineup, particularly with Hernandez, Renfroe, Bogarts, and JD all hitting in the top 5. Dahlbeck can do some damage, but those are the guys that really stand out. So I think even if you're not full stacking Boston, using 3 of those guys as mini stacks, you can certainly use Devers as well. But looking for mini stacks or one-offs from Boston makes a lot of sense, because Heaney, even if he pitches well, is likely to give up a home run or 2 to these guys.
Agreed. And I got to, who's your favorite bat out of this? Because I mean, for me, Devers, 5.4K, nobody's going to be clicking on his name comparatively to a lot of these righties. I mean, Hunter Renfroe moving up to the 2-hole, going to gain quite a bit of steam, but I even like Devers as maybe if you're looking for a one-off, the guy to do it, why not Devers?
Yeah, ownership-wise, I really like Devers, projected for 5% ownership right now. Heaney doesn't give up as much power to lefties, a 189 actual ISO, 158 expected ISO this year, but also only a 21% strikeout percentage, and Devers can basically hit everybody. So I do like that, especially if you're making Boston stacks. I think including him is one way to be different. Renfroe, I think getting that lineup bump, getting 14% ownership, relatively high, but I just love Renfroe against anyone that's going to give up power because he just has so much of it.
Especially lefties for him. So maybe it doesn't matter to Heaney. It matters to Renfroe. It would seem another guy, country strong, that one. Going to this Yankees lineup, stack up the dudes on the front end. Is there anybody on the back end? I don't think anybody's going to be shocked 1 through 5 that there's interest to be had there. Is there anybody on the back end that we can kind of identify from 6 through 9?
I mean, Gary Sanchez always kind of gives you a ton of power upside for a catcher. Outside of that, I don't think there's a whole lot. I mean, Rougned Odor is really cheap, so certainly someone you can use in Yankee stacks. Gardner and Velasquez are cheap as well, but they're hitting even further down the order and just really not good. So I think Odor and Sanchez, extending it kind of to 1 through 7 as guys that are appealing. So
play stacks, play pitchers, get a little bit of everything from this game. Did we kind of cover that?
Yeah, I think so. It's just, it seems like it's always the Boston games where it's just like, well, there's good pitching going, but they also are in really, really dangerous spots. And I kind of just, I don't love anything, but I like a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely kind of their trend. We'll move ourselves along, though. Nothing really else to say here. Los Angeles minus 136 at Detroit, 8.5 total runs here in this one. On one side, we've got Shohei Ohtani taking the bump here. High upside dude. As long as he's not walking, guys, this is looking like quite a good spot for him here. We were seeing crazy ownership this morning. Now it's down to what, 26%. There we go. 8,600 for him. That seems a little bit more realistic, but if that's going to be the case, I'm going to have a lot more than that. How about yourself?
Yeah, I really like Ohtani at this ownership on DraftKings in particular. I mean, I guess I also like him at the ownership on FanDuel at like 3 or 4%, but that's a whole different play.
But you've never played FanDuel in your life. So why the hell would you know that?
had to write an article today.
Oh, okay.
So like on FanDuel, he's just a totally different play because he's 10,500. He's the most expensive pitcher on the slate, but he's also 2% owned. And Ohtani against the Tigers certainly can give you a tournament winning score. But on DraftKings at 8,600, just pretty clearly mispriced and getting like he's getting ownership, but he's not getting a crazy amount. The Tigers active roster has the highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year. The lineup they're running out there looks pretty much like the lineup that they normally have. Ohtani's only real issue has been his walk percentage this year, but doesn't give up a lot of power, 3.69 xFIP, 29.7% strikeout percentage. His numbers are actually pretty similar to Freddie Peralta, except for Peralta's strikeout percentage is 4 points higher. But, home runs per 9, walk percentage, xFIP, all very, very similar. And Peralta is, $1,600 more expensive than Ohtani in a tougher matchup. So I think you're getting a really nice discount on Ohtani. I like him quite a bit.
Yeah, and Detroit is they've become 103 WRC plus against lefties, but against righties still, which again, Ohtani is a righty on the mound, 25.9% K percentage, only an 89 WRC plus. So I think even a little bit more gettable going up against a righty here. So I got to just love Ohtani so much here in this spot. On the other side, we've got Tariq Skubal, another guy who just fits in this category. It seems like we have 4 of them right off the bat with some nice K percentages, guys who can get swings and misses. But Skubal, out of all 4, can also, well, I'd say Heaney, but Skubal can get murdered. 491 expected slugging, 44.8% hard hit percentage. Pretty much the only thing he does well is get some swing and misses, 25.6% K percentage. But I'm not sure if the ownership really kind of dictates that we have to go nuts with it. It seems flat right now. How are you handling this guy, knowing how volatile he is and knowing that 7,400 can do a lot for your bats?
Yeah, I think the ownership's coming in around where it should be. I think it's a pretty good matchup for him. Like if you go through the Angels lineup and try and point to who's likely to do damage against him, knowing that he has good strikeout numbers, but also gives up quite a bit of power to right-handed hitters in particular. On the one hand, you're likely to get an Angels lineup that has 8 righties, and then Ohtani's a lefty who just crushes everything. But when you start going through the Angels lineup and saying like, okay, who in here has right-handed power? It's kind of Justin Upton, Joe Adell, Max Stassi to some extent, but like Gosselin's not a power hitter. Fletcher, Iglesias, neither one are power hitters. Lagares and Mayfield really aren't either. So it's a spot where as long as Skubal has some semblance of his best stuff, I think he should have success, but he also just doesn't have that wide of a margin for error ever because of the power that he does allow. And he is still facing 8 right-handed hitters. So, it's like dangerous spot for him. I think the salary accounts for most of that though. If he were lower owned, I'd probably be going crazy on him in tournaments. Since he's getting around 20% ownership, I think that's around where he should be. So I like getting to him around there in tournaments. I do also think the Angels are in play though, because not only are they facing a pitcher that gives up a lot of power, but he is getting close to 20% ownership. And the Angels are a pretty cheap team that you can go to get some leverage against Skubal. They're projected to be a little bit under-owned by their own merits as well. And it'll let you pay up for some pitching.
I've got one guy that's super cheap today that I have interest in, and he's kind of making everything work for me. We'll get to him a lot later here in the program. So stick around here, hit that like button once again, and the subscribe button, do all of that here for us. Adam breaking everything down here for you. Let's go to the bats, of course, though. Shohei Ohtani, can't blame as a hitter. We're still living in the dark ages. Love it. Fantastic. I have very little to no Angels stack interest, even up against Skubal. I mean, it's one of those things where he's getting enough ownership where I might want to be stacking up against him. And there are some righties here. Adell, Upton, I would say, would be in the projected lineup that I would want to probably be getting to. But on the whole, I just never like stacking up the Angels without Ohtani. What are you going to do with them today?
Yeah, I mean, I don't either, but I do think I'll get to them today just because, for one, we have them as a decently likely stack to succeed, 6%. Top stack percentage, about 6% ownership. So ownership coming in about where it should be. But then you add that in with the ownership going to Skubal and how cheap they are. And I think it's going to push them up a little bit. I don't mind getting to Iglesias, Upton, Adell, Stassi, and then throw in one other guy. It's nice because, you do cover the shortstop position with Iglesias. You cover the catcher position with Stassi. Upton and Odell are both cheap and have some power. And then throw in one other guy, get some good pitching and one-offs and move on. So not my top stack by any stretch, but I do have more interest in the Angels today, I think, than I normally do on days with Ohtani pitches.
And I pretty much have no interest in Detroit whatsoever. How about yourself?
Yeah, same for me there. Just really, really tough to get there, especially because when Ohtani struggles, it's typically that he walks a bunch of guys and then gets pulled and has a bad fantasy game, but he just doesn't give up a lot of power. So he's not really the kind of guy that I like looking at and saying like, oh, he's likely to get rocked. I think it's more likely when he pitches poorly, he just pitches really poorly and you get some runs for the Tigers, but like not necessarily hitters doing a lot of damage.
So check out our MLB player projections today as well. Those are 100% free here at Awesemo, just giving you the goods on the front end. You should be checking those out. We're going to talk through them a little bit here. We've referenced them. Ownership is not, but player projections 100% free. Go ahead, download those, enjoy those at your leisure. They're going to be very, very useful. Let's move ourselves along. We've got the next one up here, Baltimore plus 190 at Tampa Bay, 9 total runs in this one. Apparently, it doesn't matter what ballpark you're playing in right now for the Rays, that they play in an absolute, whatever. They just continue to go off here. Part of that is because Baltimore, John Means I thought was a decent enough pitcher yesterday where I didn't think he'd get completely obliterated. Sure enough, Nelson Cruz against any lefty, you should just probably play him. So there's that. Of course, Spencer Watkins, a guy that I bring up a lot here because I don't know why he has an S in the middle of his name. His parents hate him, but Spencer Watkins, Luis had no interest in pitching today, correct?
No,
we're not even going to talk about it. It's not even worth a mention.
Correct.
Good. Perfect. We can talk bats right off the bat. I enjoy that. Looking at the top stacks potential here for the Tampa Bay Rays, 10.3%. They are the underleveraged. So, the 8.9% ownership share that exists for them in Boston look like two teams that are very, very appealing to get to. And of course, Tampa Bay is always going to set up their lineups to succeed. Brandon Lau back up to the leadoff spot. Wander Franco now in the 2-hole. Interesting there from them. Nelson Cruz in the 3-hole. My God, all he does is hit home runs. Austin Meadows back in that lineup. Rosarena after getting scratched. This is just a dumb, ridiculous little lineup. G-Man Choi now in the 6-hole. How much do you love Tampa Bay today?
Yeah, I think it's a great spot. The only thing I can even look to point to outside of the fact that it's in Tropicana that doesn't look great on paper is that Watkins has somehow been good against left-handed hitters so far. He struck out close to 18% with a 130 expected ISO and a 329 expected WOBA. That being said, he's a right-handed pitcher who isn't good. It would be very, very surprising if as the sample size grows, he continues to actually get left-handed hitters out. He's been extremely, extremely bad against righties, about a 12% strikeout percentage and a 300 expected ISO. I think it is much more likely that the left-handed numbers start to approach the right-handed numbers than that he's actually good against left-handed hitters. So even though, it would be easier to look at numbers and just explain exactly why you like Tampa Bay if this was just a ton of right-handed power, I still really like Tampa Bay because I just don't think Watkins keeps that up. Nelson Cruz, I absolutely love. I mentioned the numbers against righties. Cruz and Rosarena, I think look great. But Brandon Lau is really good. Austin Meadows is really good. Wander Franco is the top prospect in baseball. G-Man Choi has power. This is just a really, really good Tampa lineup. They have almost a 6 implied run total in Tropicana, which is insane. And then also, not only is Spencer Watkins bad, but as we've seen many, many times recently, when teams facing Baltimore are popular, you get to the 5th inning, you're like, oh, good, maybe they're not going to score 100 runs, and then you get into the bullpen and they score 100 runs. So there's just so many ways for Tampa Bay to get there.
Absolute murder. They've gotten to that double-digit number back-to-back times now. Oh yeah, it's a Coors Field bullpen. Your Baltimore Orioles, my God. So if we're gonna talk about Baltimore on the other side here, bullpen game against the Rays, that sounds about maybe the least appealing thing I've ever heard of in my life. Cedric Mullins, you can probably play anytime you want. Is there anybody else we can possibly look to here?
No, I'm expecting it to be Ryan Yarbrough, who's just a decent pitcher. He has struck out about 18% of right-handed hitters this year, 17.5%, 176 expected ISO. But you have this game in Tropicana. I'm never going to fault anyone if they want to go to a cheap Mountcastle or Hayes or Severino, at low ownership because they do have power, but certainly nothing I'm prioritizing here.
Yeah, I'm expecting Yarbrough too, just because of how they set up that lineup. They only have righties for the most part, but 2 through 9 all righties after Mullins leading off. So anything else from this game whatsoever?
Nope.
All righty. Let's talk a little fantasy football because it is here. Our fantasy draft kit is now available for season-long and best ball fantasy leagues. And if you haven't tried this thing out, we were playing with it a little bit yesterday, and it's as good as advertised. It's the same projections, tools, and analysis that we use for NFL DFS, and it goes into a package which includes our draft wingman, best ball rankings, and stacking guide, trade value charts, so many different things that exist with this draft wingman. They have it for every fantasy football type. I was on Yahoo. I was trying out Underdog Fantasy with it. I was trying out all of these different sites. It's incredible. All the things that you can do with this draft toolkit. Check it out. You'll also receive up to $35 credit for our for Underdog and FFPC leagues. Get the package for 33% off when you use the promo code WR at checkout. That's less than $10 for everything we have to offer for season long and best ball. Click the link in the description of this video to activate the offer. And if you're going to want to stick around for NFL DFS, which I'm very much assuming, we have such a great community for NBA, obviously for MLB here, but NFL is coming up here very soon. And we have the Awesemo Plus NFL Annual Pass right now for 25% off with the promo code BLITZ. That is what Jordan Klein is flashing up on the screen. I thought he was going to flash Tinkerbell. He didn't do that. He just screwed up. That's what I saw at first. So now we've got the BLITZ promo that's hanging out there. It's a full season's worth of Awesemo Plus player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, premium slack, and tons of other new additions. We've got additions coming out every single day. Check it out. And as an added bonus, it includes the projections and updated depth charts for all preseason long stuff. So that's going to be a huge deal. Preseason is so profitable. Makachevsky does such a great job with that. So that's Blitz for 25% off Awesemo Plus NFL Annual Package. Just click the link in the description of this video to activate it. I'm telling you, I'm so excited for football. It is just about here. Very, very stoked. But in the
You're muted?
No, I'm not muted. I'm mad. I'm mad, Adam. I don't know if I can. You just put Tinkerbell on the freaking screen again. Why are you so dumb? Do you hate me? Is this trial a little bit? Okay, that's nice. All right. At least I hate you too. So we're going to keep going. Atlanta minus 198. Fuck Jordan Klein. At Miami, 7.5 total runs here in this one. Oh, goodness gracious. I love my job. Charlie Morton on the mound. He's going to be crazy popular, as he probably should be, because it's impossible to fail going up against this Miami team. They are starting to just get worse and worse and worse. Now that K percentage, which used to be pretty decent up against righties, is up to 25.2% for Miami here. 90 WRC plus on the season. Only a 143 ISO because they have nobody who can hit. Nobody with any power. Jazz Chisholm the 2-hole today. Good luck with that. Like, what are you going to do here? Charlie Morton, how do we handle him and his ridiculous amount of ownership?
I think it's a tough spot because on the one hand, if Morton were lower owned, it would just be like, play a ton of him because it's a really, really good spot. He's in Miami, which is a favorable park for pitchers. You've got this Miami lineup that just is going to strike out a lot, isn't very good. Charlie Morton himself is very good. 28% strikeout percentage this year, 3.42 xFIP is very good. The only, I guess, negative thing to point out is the ownership, because not only is he getting about 49% ownership on DraftKings right now, he's also priced up to 9,700. So he's, at least to some extent, like he was 8,300 last start, and I think he was underpriced, but to some extent, at least, his matchup is baked into the salary because he's just way more expensive than he normally would be. And people are still going there ownership wise. So I still think he's a very good play. I think you certainly look to him in cash games. I think in tournaments, if you have a low owned lineup, stack wise and hitter wise, Charlie Morton still projects as the best or one of the best pitchers. So he's still a good play. But I think there's also a pretty good chance across 150 lineups for me, I'm going to end up moving some of this Charlie Morton ownership to guys like Freddie Peralta and Lynn that are just not in as good of a spot, but are also a lot lower owned and still give you a very high ceiling.
Do you just kind of turn that into Freddie Peralta and Lynn? I know we haven't talked about them, but considering those are the guys coming in under owned, they're only 500 and 300 more, better K percentages. Is that kind of just a quick and easy tournament route to take?
Yeah, like I think that's just kind of what I expect to happen is I'm going to get a good amount of Morton just because I'll have enough lineups with low owned stacks that he fits in and great. But I would expect that I get less than 49% Morton. And similarly, I get over, 15 or so percent on guys like Peralta and Lynn, just because they don't project as well. They're not as likely to have a good start as Morton, but they do offer you similar upside and a fraction of the ownership. So those will be guys that are pretty easy to use instead of Morton if you do need to save some ownership at pitcher.
Oh, Jordan Klein, I'm sorry, baby. I get so scared. Scared of being a nobody. Give over here. Happy will give you the old kissy kiss, smoochy smooch. That's for anybody who likes Happy Gilmore, which should be everybody. On the other side of this one, Jesus Luzardo. Lots of arm talent coming into the major leagues. Haven't really seen it here. Is there any interest with this watered down? Well, I mean, it's not watered down anymore. Was watered down when you didn't have Azuna, but now you have Soler, you have Riley, you have Travis d'Arnaud in this lineup. You have Duvall there in the 7-hole. I mean, are we going to take any shots whatsoever on this cat who's actually garnering a little bit of ownership here, a little bit more than his top 2 pitcher percentage? Do you have any Jesus Luzardo interest?
like, I'm not going to say that I'll have 0 because he's 6,100 and I could see him getting into lineups a little bit, but I would much, if I have to pick one side here, I would much rather go to the Atlanta side. Luzardo just hasn't put it together. He's had a bad year, pretty much wherever he's been, whether it's AAA for the A's, the bullpen for the A's, starting for the A's, starting for the Marlins. He's pretty much just been terrible everywhere. And, the arm talent is there. And that's something that I do like to gamble on sometimes in tournaments when guys are cheap. But I would prefer to do it, A, not against a team just full of right-handed power like the Braves, and B, he's still getting 10% ownership, at least, at the moment. It's not like he's going unowned. So I'd rather be getting to the Braves side here. They're projected to be underowned. Luzardo this year against right-handed hitters has only struck out about 20.5% of hitters. He's allowed a 231 expected ISO. And then this lineup, I mean, Freddie Freeman's a lefty, but he's just really, really good. Outside of that, Albies, Soler, Riley, Swanson, d'Arnaud, Duvall, these guys all have power from the right side. It's also going to be a nice team to stack because kind of like I had mentioned with, I think the Angels, Travis d'Arnaud takes the catcher position, which is pretty weak. Dansby Swanson covers a pretty weak shortstop position. Third base isn't even that great on the slate. You have Austin Riley there. So I think that it's going to be a really nice team to stack too, because it'll kind of cover the weaker positions on the slate and allow you to roster really good one-offs at other positions.
You've never seen Happy Gilmore, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, you have? You just kept straight face that whole time? You just aren't entertained by me anymore?
I don't know what you're talking about.
When I was doing my Eric's, you tuned me out is what must have happened. Cause I was doing Happy Gilmore. Come on over here. Give me the kissy kiss, smoochy smooch. No.
I didn't even hear you.
I want to kiss you all over. I love that you were able to finish talking, block me out. And then I think there's like the last sentence. I think I've fallen into the lofty category now. I kind of am honored by that, is that, you're able to tune me out and do your own thing. And then you pick up on the last sentence I said.
Yeah. To be fair, you did it to me like 5 seconds ago. I said that I would pivot some Charlie Morton to Lynn and Peralta. And you came back with, so would you just move some of it to Lynn and Peralta?
Oh, well, I had that written in my notes. I'm sorry for being prepared, and I wanted to ask my question. Okay, well, now that mommy and daddy are fighting at the dinner table, we can continue on. Any Miami interest whatsoever?
No. I mean, zero. It's one of those, we say it a lot. Like, if there are people, like there are good tournament players, I think, that will play Miami tonight just because they pretty much will play anybody against a 40+% owned pitcher in large field tournaments. My style's not quite that contrarian, and Miami is just a little far down the list for me.
Yeah, I can't do it. Let's move ourselves along. Milwaukee at St. Louis, 7 total runs in this one. That's a low total, and it's because you get Freddie Peralta on the mound here on one side of this matchup. You get Jack Flaherty on the other one. Jack Flaherty, not really the Jack Flaherty here of old for sure. Freddie Peralta, though, oh my Lord, is he good. 34.5% K percentage, 32.3% hard hit percentage, 161 expected batting average. I mean, these are just like some of the dumbest numbers you will see for a pitcher going up against this very righty prevalent. They don't have any options in St. Louis to put up a bunch of lefties against Freddie Peralta. You get Tommy Edman, you get Lars Nootbaar. Congratulations, Lars Nootbaar. Welcome to the program. What are we doing with Freddie Peralta?
I like him in tournaments as long as the ownership stays where it is, because he does have the highest strikeout percentage on the slate by a pretty wide margin. He's at 34%. Ohtani is next highest at 29.7. The issue for Peralta is that this Cardinals lineup, it's not a great lineup, especially against right-handed pitching, but they don't really strike out a ton either. Peralta does have a 40.9% strikeout percentage against right-handed hitters this year. So I'm not saying I don't think Peralta picks up strikeouts. Like, he's just going to get some on his own. But as a whole, this lineup's not going to give you a whole lot extra. Even Nootbaar, who is not typically in the lineup, has like a 14.8% strikeout percentage. 18.4 at AAA, 14.9 in his limited time in the majors so far. It's just not a team that strikes out a ton. So that hurts Peralta a little bit. And it's what sort of puts him behind Charlie Morton at the top in terms of where people are going to go, from a medium projection standpoint. But, he's still really, really good. And he's getting like 1/3 or even less than 1/3 the ownership of Morton.
And so Jack Flaherty on the other side here. So now he had his first outing back, 81 pitches, went completely nuts, looked a little bit more like himself here. Still 2.65 ERA, 0.97 whip. I mean, a fantastic pitcher here on the other side, but I still don't love going to him because I don't know what that pitch count is going to look like. If you told me I could get 90 pitches out of him right off the bat, sure, I could go fire that up, but there's enough lefties here. I just don't feel like it's the most appealing spot. Is there any argument you can make for rostering him today?
I think he's a little underpriced compared to the other pay up options. And I guess I don't even mean that like he should be the same price as Peralta and Lynn, because I don't think he should. I just think there's going to be builds where you have money for Jack Flaherty, but you don't have money for Freddie Peralta or Lance Lynn, and he'll fit in those because he did throw 81 pitches his last time out. The other thing that makes me somewhat optimistic about how deep he can go in this game is he went 6 full innings. So I think there's a good chance that they just pulled him after 6 innings, that it wasn't, any sort of hard count at 81 pitches. So I think, he can give you 6+ innings again tonight. Wouldn't be surprising, I don't think, if he approached 90. The ownership is a little bit concerning. We have him projected for like 23 to 24% on DraftKings. I think that's about where he should be, if not a little bit high. So I'd be surprised if I end up getting overweight on Flaherty, but I do think he's kind of just in like a price range, not entirely by himself, but where I think you're just going to land on him a lot. Because you have Ohtani at 8,600, you have Flaherty at 9,100. We already mentioned Pavetta's not getting any ownership. There's nobody really else there until you get up to Charlie Morton, who's 600 more. So I think Flaherty, has a place in lineups, but I don't anticipate getting to tons of him because I would like to get to those more expensive pitchers when I can.
So if we're looking at the bats here, which it's not the most appealing thing in the entire world, I do have to say, have you seen the StatCast numbers on Avisal Garcia this season?
No, I haven't.
48.4% hard hit percentage, 507 expected slugging, 283 expected batting average. That is not what I expected to see pulling up his player profile.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising.
That's very surprising to me. It's kind of
206 expected ISO. Wait, that's not just this season. That was since 2019.
Yeah.
Where'd he go? 207 expected ISO and 300 plate appearances against right-handed pitching this year.
He's kind of falling into Brian Reynolds territory for me, where you can just play him as a one-off against even good pitchers, because it seems like, he's in the 6 hole. He's going to be sub 1% owned. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to throw it out there. Those are not numbers that I expected to see. Am I getting a little cute trying to go to like him, maybe a Rowdy Tellez, just because, you're looking at some of these first base options. You could go like 6-7 with him, Tellez 3.4K, and pay up elsewhere.
Yeah, it's not anything that I'm doing a lot, but I think that's fine. And when you look at Flaherty, he has had some issues with right-handed power going back to the start of last season. 107 actual ISO allowed, but a 173 expected ISO. This year, a 200 expected ISO. If you're looking to just, grab a relatively inexpensive one-off that can hit a home run, I think Garcia's probably the best bet factoring in salary.
Yeah, I think so too. So I'm just talking myself into wasting money on him today for a big fat 0. Looking forward to that. Look at how sharp I am. There we go. St. Louis Cardinals on the other side. Any bat that you could pinpoint? Because I see no reason I'd want to pick on Freddie Peralta at all.
I don't really see anything. You don't even have Dylan Carlson up there at like 2,900 or whatever his dumb price is. So, yeah, I don't really have anything. Like there's Peralta against right-handed hitters this year. Not only has he struck out 40.9%, he's allowed a 234 expected WOBA and a .087 expected ISO. Could one of these guys that has power hit a home run off of him? Sure. There's about every single other spot on the slate you're going to have a better chance of guessing who it is.
Yep, that's the way that I look at it as well. That is the correct take. Today's show, though, is sponsored by Jock Market. And if you haven't heard, Jock Market has turned fantasy sports into the stock exchange. It is such a clean interface. It is so easy to use. All you have to do is pull up your phone, go to the App Store, download it. Then you get to pick which players you want for today in MLB. Once NFL and NBA start back up, you're going to be able to play on there as well. PGA they have going. That's one of my favorites. Get in on the PGA stuff here. I know the IPO process is open right now for that, so check that out as well. But forget about waiting till the end of these games to make money. You can do it, and you can buy and sell shares as the games are going on in real time for real money with guaranteed payouts for all of the shares at the end of the night. Use those pregame IPOs that I alluded to for golf. Do it for MLB too, to pick up shares of your favorite players, then buy, sell, or hold based on your analysis. All you do is download the app to get started using the exclusive promo code Awesemo. That's AWESEMO for a $50 bonus on your first deposit. It's an exclusive offer to all of you in the Awesemo community. Take advantage of that today. Absolutely love finding some 2-man combinations over on Jock Market to be able to combine together, kind of really capture that upside, being able to have 2 players that kind of move up the board together. If it ends up being guys who are just going to be completely unowned in the back end of that lineup, maybe not Avisal Garcia and Rowdy Tellez or something to that nature. Usually it's a lot of the better players that are going to be listed there, but finding a 2-man in maybe an unsuspecting spot, that's going to be a really profitable way to go. You get that home run out of one of them, or you get that RBI double where he drives the other guy in, you're vaulting up that leaderboard. So check out Jock Market today. go download it and enjoy, because it is a lot of fun to play. And thank you so much to them for their sponsorship. All right, let's move ourselves along. Seattle minus 163 at Texas, 9 total runs here in this one. Seattle I liked yesterday, and outside of Luis Torrens, I didn't get much a whole lot else out of it here. But Mike Foltynewicz, I am happy to be picking on here until the cows come home. Seattle, 8.6% top stack percentage. It's a little bit, it's fifth on the slate, but a 12.2% ownership share. They're the second most popular team here in this spot. I don't even know if I want to say anything about pitching from either one of these guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, but specifically just looking at these Seattle bats, how do you handle this game?
I think there's some good value here in Seattle because you have a $3,500 JP Crawford leading off. He's not a great hitter, but he's leading off for a team with a 5.1 implied run total against a pitcher in Mike Foltynewicz, who is just absolutely terrible. Against lefties this year, Folty has struck out 14%, 276 expected ISO, 390 expected WOBA. I'll take my chances on a cheap shortstop that is pretty much average in JP Crawford. Good spot for guys like Haniger, Seager, France as well. The issue, though, is the ownership that's getting here. So I think typically in spots like this, what I end up doing is I'll mix these guys in just with lower owned stacks, lower owned pitching. I'll still use them as value and just, as highly projected players like Haniger, but I'm less likely to just be getting a lot of 5-man stacks given their ownership.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for me to get to at their current ownership for sure. I agree with you. Haniger I like just because he's a great hitter. Abraham Toro has been pretty decent here. But Mike Foltynewicz, just a guy that's pretty easy to pick on. I understand why all that ownership is going there. I am not comfortable with how much I like Texas bats today. And I understand they only have a 2% top stack percentage, but I think up against Marco Gonzalez, who's just an abysmal pitcher, a 515 expected slugging, 363 xWOBA, giving up a decent enough hard hit percentage, right around 40%. I mean, this guy is also on the other side, not very good. And there are some decent hitters, maybe not stacking up this team, but Adolis Garcia for sure. And then you get a lot of these super cheap dudes. You have nobody 4 through 9 who is above 3K. Can I talk you into any Texas Rangers on this slate with me?
I mean, they're really cheap. I never mind going to Garcia because he has power. Gianni Hernandez has speed at the top. You have a 2K catcher that I'm not going to lie, I know absolutely nothing about. I'm pulling him up now.
Gianni Hernandez, 15.2% hard hit percentage, but he runs fast, 5.1% K percentage. I saw something, I don't know if it was Fangraphs, but he had something written up about how he's just one of the best contact guys in the history of AAA or something. Maybe I'm lying about that, but I felt like I read that with him.
So Pozo, Steamer, and Zips both project to not be very good. Steamer has him with a 96 WRC plus. That's the highest out of all the projection systems on Fangraphs. He projects for they have him in a 169 ISO, also the highest of any of the projection systems there. So he's still a 2K catcher, but doesn't appear that he's going to be any good. I am interested in Gonzalez though. It doesn't sound like you are, but 7,600 against this really bad Texas team. Gonzalez has been a little bit better lately. He's coming off of a ridiculously good start against Texas his last time out. Not that you want to put a lot of weight into that, but Texas also just a really bad lineup. Gonzalez has put together really 5 decent starts in a row. 5 innings in Coors Field, 5 2/3 against Oakland, 6 against Texas, 6 2/3 against the Yankees, and then 9 against Texas. The mid-range of pitchers on this slate, I think, is just kind of risky across the board. We already talked about Tariq Skubal. He's getting around 20% ownership. He's risky. Gonzalez is in that ballpark as well. He's risky. I don't think there's a huge edge to going way overweight on any of those guys or way under. I just kind of expect to just be around there. They'll fit into some lineups where I need a cheap pitcher, and then I'll move on because I don't like Marco Gonzalez, but I also think Texas is really bad.
I mean, he had that complete gamer against Texas last time out, facing this same team here, this time on the road. Sure, if you want to fire up a little bit, but looking at our top 2 pitcher percentage for sure, he's coming in right around 10.6%, and he's coming in 20% ownership because that's the Texas and the Miami Marlins bump that you're going to get from now until forever. It's going to happen for the rest of the season. So I understand it. It's just that when I see a guy that's getting 20% that I think is an absolute trash pitcher, Marco Gonzalez, you admitted that he isn't good. So that's one win in the category. The other part is that these guys allow me to easily, if I can get 2 or 3 of them into lineups to do anything. I mean, Adolis Garcia is a real quality hitter at 3.4K. he makes a lot of things work and makes a lot of these pitchers that I really want to get to, the Lance Lynn, the Freddie Peralta, the high upside route that I want to take. I just don't feel super comfortable on the bottom end, and only a 20% K percentage on the season for Marco Gonzalez is not the most elite rate. And Texas as well, only a 22.9% K percentage against lefties. But again, as you said, everything is viable. This is a trash Texas team. Anything else? Oh, go ahead.
I'll say kind of just the way I'm thinking of it is, so going under the assumption that I'm going to need to get to pitchers in this, 7 to 8K range, I don't really see anything that I really like the ownership on for the most part. So to me, it's just like, assuming I need to get here, getting around, 15 to 20% Skubal, getting around 15 to 20% Gonzalez seems fine. Heaney's in a brutal spot, also getting like 10% ownership. The only guy really in that like 7,500 to 8K price range that isn't getting ownership that I think is decent is Zack Ranky, and we'll talk about him when we get to that game. But it's kind of just like there's no real clear spot to move that Marco Gonzalez ownership to, assuming I need to be getting to guys in that price range.
All right. That's the fair point. I like that. Let's move on then. Anything else from this one?
Nope.
All right. We've got Oakland, Paul Blackburn over here, as you said, not Cole Irvin on the mound here, going up against this White Sox team. Lance Lynn on the mound for them. So we won't talk about Paul Blackburn. That would be a waste of time, correct?
I think so. The only thing, I mean, he's
going to throw a no-hitter now. Is that what's going to happen?
Yeah, probably. But I mean, yeah, he doesn't strike guys out. The only thing I was going to say is that he has thrown 88 and 2/3 innings at AAA this year, 16 starts, 17 total appearances. So
okay.
I think he is actually stretched out, but also, 20% strikeout percentage at AAA this year. For his career in the major leagues, he has an 11.9% strikeout percentage, which is just absurdly bad. Maybe a little bit better strikeout stuff now. I guess all that I can say is he's 4K, and as far as I know, he's stretched out. That's kind of always viable, but also something I don't think will be too necessary, and I really hope isn't.
Yeah, the Andre Jackson thing was a little bit different. That was a guy that at AA had a lot of success. Interesting. I was reading also about how they have a different ball in AA, and he was talking about some of the changes from that. That was a whole nother aside, but I think that coming in for him here, coming from AAA, definitely a good thing here for Paul Blackburn. If you want to take a 4K shot, I can't say in a large field tournament, being able to play him and just jamming every bat that you want from the Boston, New York game, or anybody that's a little bit underrepresented, like Tampa Bay, some of the big boppers from there, for sure, definitely a viable way to go.
Very good ground ball percentage, both previously in the majors and at AAA this year, 53.9%. So again, it's unlikely Blackburn has a good game, but it's also just really unusual to have a 4K flat pitcher that can go 5 or 6 innings physically and has at least a redeeming quality in that he gets a lot of ground balls.
Well, I was going to reference that a little bit in terms of why for the White Sox, we're looking at some of their top stack potential here. It was more middle of the road than what I expected. I mean, when Paul Blackburn gets updated, I refreshed the top stacks tool. I expected the White Sox to vault up the board, but there's definitely some smart guys behind the scenes here at Awesemo. And I got to say, I think it's appropriate that they wouldn't take a huge jump here. They're a tiny bit underrepresented, only a 5.4% ownership share, 5.9% top stack potential, but ground ball rate does not generally cede to absolute home runs or getting completely shelled in a way where you want to be stacking up this team like crazy, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the one hand, it's a good spot because Blackburn, unless, again, maybe he's changed things at AAA because he does have a higher strikeout percentage than he's basically ever had in his career. But what we know of him from 21 total games in the majors, just shy of 100 innings pitched, is that he's only allowed 0.9 home runs per 9, but he doesn't really strike anyone out. And so when you're talking about a White Sox team that has guys with as much power as the White Sox have, but that also swing and miss a decent amount, I do like going to hitters like that just because they're going to put the ball in play. But, again, Blackburn has just done such a good job of keeping the ball on the ground and getting those hitters to hit the ball where he wants them to, that I'm still keeping my expectations in check.
And on the other side of this is the guy we really want to be talking about, Lance Lynn here. I actually took the under on his 6.5 strikeout prop over on the MLB player props tool. There's not a crazy number there, 6%. But for me, it just comes down to, I like Lance Lynn a lot for DFS purposes, but there's a lot of power that exists in this Oakland lineup. You get Marte up there in the 2-hole as well, somebody who can get run and get moving around here. This is definitely a boom bust spot. I think I'm kind of hedging a little bit of my DFS exposure by taking the under there. I think you could still have a decent enough outing and go quite a ways, but 28.1% K percentage on the season, a 188 expected batting average. seems to check every box. It's just a really tough matchup. How are you handling Lance Lynn today?
Yeah, it's a brutal matchup for Lynn, especially in terms of strikeouts. Like when you go through the A's lineup, Seth Brown strikes out a good amount. Matt Chapman is at 33% against right-handed pitching since the start of last season. That's about it. Even Yan Gomes is at 20%. Josh Harrison's at like 13%. So it's a really, really difficult team to strike out. But there's a couple of things to like. For one, they only have 3 guys that'll be hitting left-handed. Against righties this year, Lynn has struck out 33.8%. So kind of like we talked about with Freddie Peralta, he's going to get some strikeouts just on his own because he's really good. The other thing to like is that Lynn throws a lot of pitches. So if he's not able to get strikeouts at a high rate, assuming that, the A's aren't just lighting him up, which is certainly possible, but I think pretty unlikely, he'll give you a lot of innings, most likely. He's 105 pitches last start, 100 the one before that, 104 the one before that. If the A's are putting the ball in play and not striking out, he's probably being more efficient than normal, and he'll make up some of those strikeout points on just how deep he goes into the game. The big thing for me, though, is just like we talked about with Peralta, he's getting 15% ownership on DraftKings, and he's one of the most talented pitchers on the slate. Do I think Charlie Morton is a better play if we're just, talking cash and ignoring everything else? Then yes, I do. But I really don't think the range of outcomes is that different between Charlie Morton and Lance Lynn when you're just thinking in terms of, how many fantasy points can Lance Lynn score me when he has a good game. I think he's very capable of still being the top scoring pitcher on the slate, and he's getting a fraction of the ownership. So even though I absolutely hate the matchup, and I don't have a ton of confidence that he goes out there and mows the A's down, I think that he's not getting quite as much ownership as he should.
The 3.7 implied run total for Oakland doesn't look very good here. Lance Lynn, obviously a fantastic pitcher, but on the pure pedigree of the A's having so much power, having some speed in the lineup, having so many ways that they can put runs up on the board, on the top stacks tool, 2.7% top stack potential, coming in with only 1% ownership. Are you going to kind of smatter them into 150 today?
I could see having a little bit. I don't think they're really going to show up for me all that much, though, because for one, Lynn's not getting much ownership to drive Oakland up. And then also, I think it's just really, really tough to get to much that you like here. When like Lynn this year has held righties to a 199 expected WOBA and a .093 expected ISO. So, the A's do have a lot of really, really good bats, but it's just so hard to make a case for a lot of them. Even against lefties, a 140 expected ISO, 292 expected WOBA. Jed Lowry, Matt Olson. If you get to those guys, as one-offs, I think it's okay. But there's a lot of pitching I would rather target than Lance Lynn today.
I think Seth Brown falls into I don't know who that dude for the Angels was. Jack Mayfield, who seemed to homer every single slate for whatever stupid reason. Yeah. Seth Brown, sub 3K. Feel like he's homers every single slate that he's in the lineup. So
yeah, he's come through big for me a couple of times this year.
Oh, has he? Do you have a Seth Brown jersey?
It's on the list of things I need to order and haven't gotten around to.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, because his parents are probably proud of you, because that would be the first jersey ever sold on MLB.com to Seth Brown. White Sox on the other side, for sure, a talking point. Paul Blackburn, I alluded to his ground ball. Well, you alluded to his ground ball rate for me. That was nice of you. But the White Sox, still a fantastic offense, ridiculous offense, won through everybody. Jake Lamb even joined the party yesterday. Not that, hey, hitting a home run yesterday is indicative of how you're going to do today. I'm just pointing out that he had a home run yesterday. Anybody that you really have targeted on this White Sox team, and then are you looking at full stacking them?
So I think the ownership's coming in around where it should be on the White Sox. I don't really feel strongly on them one way or the other. I think that it's a high upside spot because they're going to be able to put the ball in play. Again, just don't love what hitters have been able to do against Blackburn in the past. For his career against right-handed hitters, he's only struck out 10.8%, but a 117 expected ISO, 333 expected WOBA. I am interested in Luis Robert. He's hitting 7th. He's only 3,300. That seems like a really good salary for him. Other than that, I think that the White Sox are pretty expensive, and it's going to be more difficult, I think, to get to them as one-offs. But, if you're full stacking and then paying down at pitching, I think that's fine. It's more so just like, I mostly am going to want them either together or not to be there, because I think if Paul Blackburn is doing what he does well, then there's not really any one individual guy that's going to look that good. If he is not on top of his game, he's just going to get shelled, and that's good for everybody.
All right. Yeah, I'll play Robert forever here. He ended up out of the 7-hole, putting up 29 the other day for me. Didn't mean anything because I lost money, but I just like that too about him. White Sox, sure, go ahead. They're fantastic hitters, but I'm not super enthusiastic about them the way that I am on most slates, for sure. Just facing a ground ball pitcher. It's decent enough hitting weather, 78 degrees, 78% humidity. That's fine. Anything else to really cover from this one?
Nope.
All right. We've got 2 new YouTube channels that you guys need to be checking out. That Awesemo odds channel, which is awesome. We've got the breakfast menu from Josh and Ben Rasa kind of put together over there now. We've got a bunch of betting content coming out constantly for the NFL season. And then, of course, the fantasy football channel, at Awesemo Fantasy Football channel, pinned at the top of the YouTube chat here. Make sure you're clicking subscribe. Go check those out. Make some comments on the video. Tell me who you want for to win the Super Bowl. If we have week one, I'm going to be doing a week one props or over under video here on Friday with Greg. Put in the comment section which one you think we're idiots for, complete dolts about. Let us know what your picks are for week one. Go through all of those videos, check them out. So much content coming from everybody here at Awesemo, your favorite Awesemo hosts, of course. And if you want some other free content, we've got it over here on the main hub here at the Awesemo channel. But I promise you that fantasy football channel and odds channel, that's going to be where we put a lot of content here going forward. So you want to be subscribed to those if you're listening here now. Check them out. You will enjoy, I promise. All right, we got 3 to go. We'll fly. Houston minus 163 at Kansas City, 9.5 total runs. In this one on one side, Zack Ranky. Hey, you wanted to talk about him. I'll let you talk about him. Make the case for him.
I think the case is just that he's getting virtually no ownership. Kansas City has a 3.9 implied run total. You compare that to, the other teams that are facing pitchers in this price range that are getting ownership. Texas is at 4, so about the same. Angels are at 4.5 against Skubal. Zack Ranky doesn't have very good strikeout stuff anymore. One of the worst strikeout pitchers on the slate at 18.6%. He's just kind of been mediocre this season. 4.11 xFIP, 1.44 home runs per 9. But like being a really good pitcher just isn't the criteria. It isn't what we can get in the mid-range on the slate. Like being average doesn't write you off. He's not really any worse at pitching than guys like Gonzalez or Skubal. Kansas City has one hitter in their lineup that's been an above average hitter against right-handed pitching since last year. That is Salvador Perez. I'm not saying that I think, Greinke necessarily has a really good game, but I don't think that Tariq Skubal and Marco Gonzalez should be getting 18 times the ownership that Zack Ranky is getting.
All right. I got to agree with that. 140 ISO against righties on the season for Kansas City, only a 22.2% K percentage. But what this guy will do is he'll just pitch a lot of innings here too. So I think he can get the kind of workload. And I pretty much ever play Zack Ranky, but we did see a little bit of upside, 7 Ks against the Angels. I mean, the Angels have some Ks, probably more so than Kansas City, but with no Soler there, not a lot of power, not a lot of issues that I'm super worried about in that KC lineup. On the other side, you can still play some Sal Perez or kind of the usual boppers in the middle of that lineup, whether it's Benintendi or whomever else. But Zack Ranky doing a really good job at just doing what Zack Ranky does over the course of this entire season. So why not on this slate? I'm okay with that. On the other side of it here, what do we got? We've got Brady Singer. We don't want to play Brady Singer, do we?
I don't think so, just because it's a tough spot against the Astros. He's actually been pretty decent this year, but I think there's a couple guys in this price range that I would rather get to than take him against the Astros.
I would agree with that. We'll get to him here in a minute. I'm just going to put my reputation on the line. It's fine. No big deal. I played Matt Harvey on Monday. Can't get much worse than that. It's rock bottom for me. But on the Houston side, there are some bats that are always underpriced. Michael Brantley isn't 3.3K. Yay, let's rejoice about that. He's now 3.9K. You got Jordan Alvarez back in that lineup on the top end here, 5.2K, but absolutely love him on this slate. Looking at the Houston Astros in the top stack tool, they're coming in number 1. They're coming in under-owned as well, which I was very surprised about against Brady Singer. Good game environment just in terms of weather, 81 degrees, 75% humidity. What is your Houston interest here?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised they're not getting more ownership, and I kind of wish they were because I don't really like them. But with the way things look right now, I'm going to end up playing them because I trust our numbers more than I trust what I think. So, I kind of wish they were getting more ownership, but it does sort of make sense that they're not getting a ton because while Brantley is still underpriced and Aledmus Diaz at 3,400 is underpriced for a hitter hitting 5th on a team with a 5.2 implied run total, you do at least have an expensive Alvarez. Gurriel's expensive. Altuve's expensive. Correa's price has come up a little bit. So they're not quite as dirt cheap as they were recently when they were getting tons of ownership. You also don't have Kyle Tucker in there at 3,700 or whatever he normally is to pull up the ownership. So I think it does make some sense. Singer's been pretty solid this year. He's one of KC's top pitching prospects. He's held right-handed hitters to a .084 expected ISO, 296 expected WOBA. He's only struck out 20% of them though. Lefties, he has a 23.6% strikeout percentage, a little bit more production, 331 expected WOBA, 151 expected ISO. I'm willing to bet on Houston's talent here, especially I really like that Alvarez is back in the lineup, but it's just one of those spots where I don't feel great about it because I actually do respect Singer as a pitcher.
All right. And then on the other side, KC, anybody that really sticks out to you?
No, I think you said it. Salvador Perez, you can always play. He's always going to be one of the best catchers. Other than that, I just don't really see anything.
All right, let's get to my pitcher. He's not Matt Harvey because he's way better than Matt Harvey, but my play of the day here, we've got Philadelphia minus 168 now. So that's changed. It's become, I bet this earlier today hard. Minus 135 is where it opened at, which is what we have on the board. It's changed to 168 here, going up against the Diamondbacks. We've got Ranger Suarez against Somberto Castellanos. I have a ridiculous, and when I say ridiculous, I have a ridiculous amount of Ranger Suarez in lineups right now. How do you feel about him?
I agree. I think he's a pretty big question mark in terms of what he's going to be. He's had a good season, but most of that was out of the bullpen. He's only made 3 starts. When the Phillies traded for Ian Kennedy at the deadline, they moved Suarez from the closer's role into the starting rotation. Since then, he's thrown 33, 61, and 82 pitches. He's walked a lot of guys, but he has still struck out about 23.5% of the hitters he's faced as a starter. So at least so far, that's still been there. It's an okay matchup against Arizona. I do think they have a better lineup against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching. They have some guys that can certainly do some damage here, but he's only 5,700. We've kind of talked about all of the flaws with like every pitcher below 8K today. So on slates like that, I typically like to save some money and just pay down as far as I can anyway. And then the fact he threw 82 pitches last time out, I think is really, really good. So it's not safe, but I just think that there's not a whole lot that is safe on this slate, and saving some money there is pretty appealing.
122 batted balls this season, only 4 barrels. The guy has a 3.3% barrel percentage. I just think that he can avoid getting hit. I think the Ks can be there in a meaningful way. Maybe not the 26% that we're seeing right now, mainly coming out of the pen. We see that regress a little bit when somebody becomes a starter. You don't get to just come in and throw your flame-throwing stuff and do whatever you want to do at the beginning of it. But I am gigantically over the field on Ranger Suarez today. I don't respect this Arizona team whatsoever. 4.2 implied total, I think, is wrong. I smashed that number. I used our betting model, and now it's changed drastically. Definitely be checking that out here as well. I'm so glad that you're on board with me there. Humberto Castellanos on the other side here. I don't think that that's really going to matter whatsoever. How do we feel about, on the one side, 5.4 implied runs, the Phillies coming in with the most ownership out of anybody on the slate? What are we doing with them?
Yeah, Castellanos is another 4K pitcher that's stretched out, but I don't think we'll need to go there. No. I think it's a good spot for Philadelphia. They are getting a lot of ownership. And so the way things look right now, they're still fine to get to. Bryce Harper for sure. He's 6K, but really, really good spot for him. No issues there. Real Muto is always one of the best catcher options. Herrera's cheap and leading off. Mixing Philadelphia into lower owned teams is fine because they are in a good spot. They should have success here. But in terms of where I'm prioritizing stacking with the way things look right now, I'd be getting to Houston before them. I'd be getting to Tampa, Boston before I get to Philadelphia full stacks.
Just body bagging people in chat while we're talking. Okay, why not? Just body bag somebody. We also have Jordan Klein. Hopefully that wasn't anything that I said that would get me in trouble or anything. Nick Castellanos. I was going to say he's laughing. Of course, I'm just become self-conscious like that. And somebody else earlier said that you had dreamy eyes. So Adam, you have dreamy eyes. Congratulations.
That's the second time we've heard that on shows recently, I think.
Oh, baby.
Last time it was that they were better than Lofty's. So I sent that to him immediately.
Just why not? All right, Arizona on the other side. I have no interest in them because I am so heavily invested in Ranger Suarez. I should probably actually make a couple Arizona lineups now, just as kind of a hedge out of that. What are you doing with them?
I don't think they're the worst stack, just because again, we don't know exactly what to make of Suarez. Like, he's typically, when guys go from being relievers to starters, they struggle because you're facing hitters, second, third, fourth time through the order. You don't necessarily have the stuff, the number of pitches. And Suarez actually hasn't been really mixing in other pitches. He's still throwing like his sinker, his fastball a ton. So I'm not completely sold that he does end up being a good starter. Arizona does have some cheap right-handed power, but that being said, they're also projected to get a bit more ownership than I think they deserve. So, if you need some savings and somebody like Nick Ahmed at 3K or Carson Kelly at 4K catching, I think those guys are okay, but I doubt that I end up with much in the way of Arizona stacks.
All right, last one we got here, Pittsburgh versus the Dodgers. We have no idea who's going to be starting here for the Dodgers. I'm looking at all of these pitchers on the right side, I mean, are we just going to kind of be looking at a bullpen game from them today?
From the Dodgers?
From the Dodgers.
So I think it's supposed to be Mitch White.
Okay, that's what I have listed. But
yeah, that hasn't been confirmed other than Dave Roberts saying the other day that White was going to throw the bulk of the innings. He's thrown 58 and 59 pitches in his last 2 outings. So I think you could see him get like 5 innings today against Pittsburgh, which does actually make him an interesting option in tournaments at 6K, just for the same reason Suarez is. Like, we haven't seen him throw as many pitches recently as we've seen Suarez throw, but he does have a really good matchup against the Pirates, and the Dodgers do need to try and save their bullpen at least a little bit. So if you see him get 5 innings at 6K, I think there's a decent chance that he ends up in that same ballpark in terms of final score as guys like Gonzalez and Skubal that are more expensive and also really risky. So I do have interest in going to White and just hoping I get like 5 innings out of him. Someone asked in chat earlier if he was a good option on FanDuel. I think he's a DraftKings specific option because you only need the one pitcher on FanDuel. And then also I think it's really unlikely that you get a quality start from White, which hurts you on FanDuel.
Okay. And then JT Brubaker on the other side here, somebody that I'm going to have some Dodger stacks up against. I'm going to stack the Dodgers pretty much every single time, especially because those lineups come out later. And it seems like the ownership hasn't necessarily been there. I mean, we got a really ugly Dodger lineup the other night. But I think as long as we're going to get something competent here at the top end, 7.4% top stack potential, only 8.1% ownership share. It's pretty negligible. How do you handle the Dodgers today?
I like the power numbers that Brubaker has given up this year. He's been a pretty good pitcher overall. 4.02 xFIP is pretty solid. He has struck out about 23.5% of hitters, only a 6.5% walk percentage. All that's good, but he has allowed 2 home runs per 9 innings. If you look at his expected power numbers compared to his actual, it seems like he's gotten a little bit unlucky, but still a 187 expected ISO to lefties and 186 to righties suggests that he's going to give up some power, and you just have a really, really powerful Dodgers lineup. So they are pulling some ownership. They're projected to get about the ownership that they should according to the top stack tool, but individually you can mix these guys in and just get, add a lot of upside to your lineup because of how much power there is really from the top to the bottom of this order.
And I had said Brian Reynolds before. I mean, 3.2 implied runs. That's nothing that we're going to be super excited about, but Brian Reynolds is just a major league freaking hitter. 519 expected slugging here on the season, 289 expected batting average. Again, just getting a lot of, I just have a lot of respect for him here. So I think I'm going to have to fire up a little bit. That's about all I got from the Pittsburgh side. How about you?
Yeah, same here. Anytime Reynolds is that price, he's playable, but this team does have maybe the lowest implied run total on the slate. If not, it's really close. So I'm not getting too excited about the Pirates. It looks like it's them and the Orioles tied and the Marlins.
All right. Anything else to finish out this one and finish out the slate?
Nope.
Amazing. Well, we just got done. I mean, that was smooth. I guess we're a couple minutes over, but I think the guys right after us will be all right with it. We got Josh. We've got Greg. You're going to love it. Coming up with the Live Before Lock. Don't go anywhere. Make sure you're checking that out. And then, of course, coming up at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, myself and Ben Rasa, PGA Live Before Lock, talking to you all the things the Northern Trust. All caps, 1 word. 3 words, but whatever. The huge golf tournament. The playoffs are starting. The FedEx playoffs. He's Adam Scherer. I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck tonight.
public, man. It makes me feel like I'm doing a really different job. It's like doing open heart surgery with like knives and spoons. And we are live. Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock. It is Wednesday, August 18th. At some point in time, I got to realize that it's August because it doesn't appear to happen every single day of the week. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Greg Ehrenberg. We've got a 10-game slate to break down. And I'm really happy with myself because I'm looking at the camera and I'm saying everything that I want to say. And that is not what I saw on a video of mine from 3 years ago. It was very much the exact opposite. Not a lick of confidence in my voice. Boy, have things changed. Greg, how are you doing? How are you feeling about this slate today?
Good. I mean, now, of course, I need to look up some of your early videos, and I've seen some of them. They have their charm to them, but people don't realize if you're just sitting at home listening to us talk, and it's not to say that we're the greatest in the world at doing this at all. But anybody who starts doing this, it's really bad when you first start. It seems easy. It's really not. Just sit on your computer and try talking to yourself for like 10 minutes and recording it and see what comes out afterwards. It could be brutal. I definitely have some old videos that don't have them anymore, thankfully. But there was old videos of me doing stand-up comedy that I'm sure have not aged well at all.
Yeah, you don't really understand that you have to create additional energy. You're just speaking, and I'm creating absolutely zero energy on this video. It looks like it's the saddest day of my life. And I'm trying to be like, hey guys, you should play fantasy baseball. It's so bad. I guess it's, that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing. I mean, you do this enough, you either feel better about it and get better, or they probably don't want to pay you to do the content any longer.
And the good thing is at least now you're good enough to pretend that you enjoy fantasy baseball, which is always positive.
Absolutely. I like fantasy baseball as a moneymaker. I don't feel like it has the same sort of zest, the way that we can talk about NBA and really like dictate our individual opinions. But from a technical standpoint, I really like MLB DFS because it's so numbers based, and I'm a nerd like that.
That is also fair. And hey, I think there are some pretty interesting avenues to talk about on the slate, talking about just nerd stuff in general. I mean, we have to look at some of the chalk pitchers today, like Charlie Morton, who's picking up 1,000,000% ownership. And one thing that did get corrected that didn't early in the day, but FanDuel did open up with a over under 3.5 strikeout prop for Charlie Morton that I bet very early in the morning that I feel good about. But yeah,
is that a first 5 inning prop?
No, that was just that they posted some really weird lines lately. Not to get too deep into the weeds of it, but they posted a line the other day. It was like Tyler Molly, like plus 1,300 for over 2.5 strikeouts. Somebody parlayed that together with something else, and it was like 90. It was like they ended up betting $100 with 92,000, and FanDuel paid it out.
Did they really?
They did.
Good for them. Also, I wish that I had the ability to use FanDuel Sportsbook and see those lines, because that seems like a decent opportunity to make some money. But we're going to try to give you guys some more opportunities to make some money by providing you guys with the goods. And we are going to start right here with our top pitchers. So let's lead it into Charlie Morton. I guess 48+% owned on DraftKings, 38% owned on FanDuel. Is Charlie Morton your top pitcher today?
Yes, but I'm not wildly different from the field on him. I'm somewhere around the same ballpark right now in terms of ownership. He's in right around half my lineups right now on DK. It's probably a little high for FanDuel, although I'm only playing on DraftKings today. But if I was playing on FanDuel, I'd probably be under the 38% number. That's a very, very large number for one pitcher site. We also have him with a 13% chance to be the top overall scoring pitcher on FanDuel. DK, though, we need to roster 2 pitchers. We have him with a 49% ownership share, like you said, but a 33% chance to be one of the top 2 scoring pitchers. He's fitting into my lineups pretty easily. I'm going to have him in a lot of my lineups, but he's not somebody that's going to make or break my night just because the field's there and I'm kind of close to the field.
Yeah, and I think everybody should be pretty close to the field. To me, he's very clearly the best pitcher option that you can get to today. Showed up in my stuff in like 43% of lineups. We have him at 48% or 48 plus for ownership. So I don't really have much to add on Charlie Morton. I guess the bigger question then becomes, who else do you have your eye on? Who are some of your top pitchers for today?
Yeah, so I mean, the key with this high-end pricing range is I do find Charlie Morton to be in tier of his own just because of the matchup he has, and I think he's a little bit too cheap. And then you get a bunch of these guys who are kind of grouped together that I put in the same umbrella: Freddie Peralta, Lynn, Shohei Ohtani. I get to Ohtani the most of those guys just because he's a little bit cheaper than them. That is for DraftKings purposes. And then we can talk about FanDuel after that. But then Freddie Peralta and Lance Lynn, I like Peralta and Lynn both individually. I'm finding it a little hard to get to Lynn just because of the matchup against the A's and that I can't just roster everybody a ton. So Lynn is my least favorite of the top 4 starters.
Well, let's do this then, because Lance Lynn is my second favorite of the top 4 starters. Showed up in 22% of my sims. Basically a coin flip with Jack Flaherty at this point, but the fact that his ownership is a lot lower is at least mildly appealing to me. I don't like the spot. It's not at all a fun time getting the A's. And I'm a little surprised. The line is basically like 5.2 runs for the White Sox, 3.8 for the A's. And I have it more like 4.3 for the A's. So I'm kind of torn between using everything that I think is going on and using the actual money line for this game. And that's what's really tripping me up on whether or not I want to go to Lance Lynn on a day like today. Ultimately, I think I have to move forward with it. I actually expected Freddie Peralta to just be popping a little bit more, given the fact that he's got a 35% K rate this year, but it just doesn't appear to be happening. I guess it's just a function of the price and his relationship to Morton's price. Personally, I'm pretty high on Freddie Peralta today. I'm certainly over the field on him. I don't really understand the ownership on him, and we don't have him projected super well, which also could be something that's factoring in the ownership projection being a little bit lower than him. And something that I think might be causing projection models to be a little bit lower on Freddie Peralta, and it's something that's been brought up a lot when I've talked about on some recent slates, is people kind of freak out at the idea of rostering Freddie Peralta as of late because he's had some really wonky pitch counts, and they've been kind of cautious with him down the stretch of the season. And that does make him a little hard to project just because you don't know how deep he's going to go into the game. But for tournament purposes, the upside is so significant. I don't really mind that as much. And the pitch count has been up in the last couple of games. So last 2 starts, 89 and 98 pitches. The 2 before that were 68 pitches and 51. So I think that is something that's giving some people a little bit of pause. And that also could be one of the reasons that doesn't project quite as well in a lot of projection models. But for me personally, I'm not too concerned about it just because I care more about the upside than the median outcome. For sure. I have him in for 5 1/3. And I think the real driver here is the fact that, at least from a projection model standpoint, the Cardinals do not strike out a lot. Tommy Edman, 16% K rate and steamer. Arenado, 15%. Molina, Newt Bar, which honestly just feels like a made up name, 16% and 18% respectively. So they've got a lot of guys that you just don't simply expect to K. And it's sort of negating that big 35% number. If they were facing a different team where that aggregate strikeout rate is like in the 24, 25 range, I think Peralta would be popping a lot more. But I think he's just sort of getting the worst end of the stick in terms of a strikeout matchup.
Yeah, that's reasonable. The one thing I will add about him is the Cardinals have such a right-hand dominant lineup that is something that plays in his favor also. I mean, we saw yesterday, for instance, with Corbin Burns. He did not have his good stuff yesterday, but he was kind of able to navigate through the Cardinals lineup anyway, just because there aren't that many tricky spots for elite right-handed pitchers against them because it's almost all right-handed bats. The lefties that the Cardinals have are few and far between, and then some of them are guys, like Matt Carpenter, who is, pretty washed up at this point. So it just the fact that it's a very right-hand dominant lineup that will play in Peralta's favor.
Anybody else we want to touch on so far? We've kind of worked our way through the top guys. Are you an Ohtani guy today? Jack Flaherty. We've got Marco Gonzalez, Tariq Skubal, all in double digits, or at least in the ballpark of 20% ownership. Do those guys appeal to you?
So on DK right now, my most rostered pitcher is Charlie Morton. Number 2 is Ohtani. 3 is Peralta. For Ohtani, it's just elite strikeout upside, then combined also with the fact that he comes in cheaper price than a lot of these guys. So with Ohtani, I think that if he was priced up, this is going to be a stupid point, but if he was in the same price range as Peralta and Lynn, I think he'd be my lowest owned of those 3. But just the fact that he's $1,400 cheaper than Lynn, $1,600 cheaper than Peralta, that's something that draws me to him. That and, relatively modest ownership at 26%. We still have 24% going to Flaherty. Lynn and Peralta are both a little bit less owned probably than they should, except it's not like any of those guys are massively popular, but the salary savings are important for me with Ohtani. And then for FanDuel purposes, it's kind of the opposite, where the reason I want to get to Ohtani is because, or if I was playing on FanDuel, the reason I want to get to Ohtani is because he's only projected for 2% ownership because his price is elevated. So DK, I like him because his price is down. FanDuel, I like him because the ownership is down.
So who of the guys that are actually pulling any ownership are you aggressively down on today. Lance Lynn, I guess, is one of them. Anybody else that you're kind of avoiding today?
Marco Gonzalez. That's
Okay.
really curious ownership to me. A number I don't understand at all. I mean, 18% ownership for 18.8% projected ownership for Marco Gonzalez right now. He's been awful this season. So he's somebody who I just never really considered all that much at all for this slate. His numbers for the year: 4.35 ERA, 5.83 expected ERA. Also not a good fantasy pitcher. Only 20% K rate, so he doesn't really generate swing and misses. The matchup for him is certainly good today, but I mean, he's 19% projected ownership at 7,600. Ohtani's 26% projected ownership at 8,600. And I just think Ohtani is far and away the better pitcher. So $1,000 salary difference there between the two isn't that big of a deal for me. There's cheap guys that I think have more strikeout upside than Marco Gonzalez. So that's a really curious ownership to me.
Where are you going for value? Is there anybody that you're picking up in the Humberto Castellanos, Paul Blackburn, Spencer Watkins, any of those guys popping? Are you paying down all the way at all?
I mean, I'm not all the way down. I have a little bit of exposure to Skubal. I have a little bit of exposure to Andrew Heaney, and the Heaney one never feels good, except just kind of as a blind sort of rule with how I approach Andrew Heaney. If he's not picking up ownership, he's going to end up in my player pool a little bit. He has really significant strikeout upside. If he's somebody who's picking up a lot of ownership, I want to stack against him pretty heavily because he's not good. He gives up a lot of hard contact, gives up a lot of home runs, but when he's on, he generates a lot of strikeouts. So Andrew Heaney for the year, 5.78 ERA, a little unlucky though, 4.05 expected ERA, but the key here is the 28% K rate. So Andrew Heaney only goes one of two ways. He either strikes everybody out and has a really big fantasy game, or he just gives up a whole bunch of homers. So high variance pitcher. And when Andrew Heaney is not picking up ownership, I do think it makes sense to have him in the player pool a little bit.
Got to ask the question. This is coming from Mark Curry. I don't know if you've seen it. Is the picture Ric Flair or is it not Ric Flair?
I don't even know what this is. I don't know what this is referencing.
Okay. Well, then we don't need to go into it any further. Don't be afraid to search for it and look. I don't believe that it is him, but I wish that it were. That's all I'll say. I don't want to provide any further details on this stream because this bad boy is family friendly.
Oh, so I get it. Well, I don't really know that much about Ric Flair, but I'm just going to guess. I'm going to say he's the guy who
know anything.
Yeah, he's the guy who woos. I'm going to say it is him.
Okay. Well, you will woo for him if you check that picture out. Do you have any other pitchers you want to touch on first?
Let's see. Is there anybody who I have some exposure to that I haven't really mentioned of significance? Not really. Is there anybody we haven't talked about that is getting into your player pool, or did you get to Marco Gonzalez, unlike me?
I would get to Marco Gonzalez. I have him as relatively neutral. Same sort of scenario for Skubal. I like Zack Ranky more than the 1% ownership that we're showing. I've got him at 11%. I liked him 5 days ago or whenever it was that he led the slate in scoring. And I see no reason that can't be a similar output again today. He's 8,100. He's not a guy that I just want to jam in, but if he is completely unowned, I at least have a little bit of interest in him. He has the ability to go deeper in the game. So what he lacks in strikeout upside, he kind of gains in volume, or at least I hope that he does. After that, I don't know. Mitch White, if he actually starts, is fine at 6K. I'm kind of just in line with the public. You know, the top four guys in salary are all about owned where I thought they should be. Peralta a little bit. I think he should be a little lower. Lynn a little bit higher. But either way, I'm in that ballpark. Morton, sure. Flaherty, sure. Ohtani, yes. Heaney at 10%, yes. Like, I get where the field is today. I don't really have a big take.
All right, fair enough. I think Greinke's not in my player pool personally. I think it's reasonable enough at 0.5% projected ownership. Because listen, if there's anybody you're making a case for at 0.5% projected ownership, it's just like, hey, I haven't projected to be an optimal lineup more than 0.5% of the time. I'm not going to argue against it. Greinke's somebody I just personally don't roster a ton because of his lack of strikeout upside. But I don't have a massive issue with saying he should be more than 0.5% owned.
Like I said, I got him at 10. So nothing too crazy. I'm not going to be freaking out. He's like, let's see, where do I have him in actual ranking? Tied with Freddie Peralta for 8th. So, you know, guys that I would roster no matter what, but not necessarily a ton. All right, that's it for pitching. We want to talk a little bit about the schedule for the rest of the day. we are not done after this. 7:30 Eastern time. So about a half hour after Greg and I pack it in. PGA Live before lock. Ben and Eric coming back after the deeper dive. They are breaking down the Northern Trust, I believe. I think that's what it is.
Beats me.
I'm almost positive it's the Northern Trust. That could have been last week. I don't totally remember, but I promise you this. Golf is kicking off tomorrow, and it's part of the FedEx Cup. That much I can guarantee. You want to make sure you're watching PGA Live before lock. And if you are interested in some free content, boy, are you in luck. Because if you're watching this show, then one of the two main things that you could possibly ask for are free today, and that would be MLB Player Projections. If you want to get an idea of what we have to offer behind the paywall for MLB, today is the day. Our projections are free. Head to the website, check out Nightbot. Maybe Nightbot's dropping that link in there, but go to awesemo.com to pull them up if you want. Jordan Klein has got them on the screen right now. They are free today. Use them and try to win some money. We're moving on to hitting. Who is your top stack for today?
So I just reran. It is the Astros. That's the short answer. But okay. I just had to rerun my lineups because now that Paul Blackburn is starting for the A's, he's not very good, and that made me really bump up the amount of exposure that I wanted to get to the Chicago White Sox. So the White Sox are right up near the top for me as well. So I want to talk about both these teams, but first starting with the Paul Blackburn thing, because it's kind of the more recent news. And I'm not sure, do we have our projections updated for Blackburn being in now?
He's in our ownership, so I'm guessing
okay.
Yes.
He was not in the top pitchers tool, I don't think. I think we still had or maybe not. Maybe he isn't here now that I refreshed it. I'm not seeing Blackburn or Irvin, but all right, that aside, Paul Blackburn is not good at all. So his major league numbers, he has a 5.69 ERA and a 4.41 FIP. And then you start to look at some of his minor league numbers for this year. I don't understand how this guy ended up getting called up because he has made 17 appearances in AAA, 16 starts. In AAA this year, he has a 4.97 ERA, a 4.3 FIP, a 4.51 xFIP. He's generating some ground balls, but still a fairly high home run to fly ball rate. I think that Paul Blackburn is maybe the worst starting pitcher on the entire slate today. And just given this news is kind of late in terms of there being a starting pitching change and that Cole Irvin is a fairly decent starting pitcher who is supposed to be on the mound for Oakland. I mean, we only have a 5.8% ownership share going to Chicago White Sox. So I want to be really heavily overweight to them. So they're becoming a very high priority for me.
Yeah, I think Blackburn got the benefit of being on the 40-man roster and Chris Bassett taking one to the face yesterday. Bring him up today, due to pitch in AAA. Give everybody an extra day's rest on the major league roster, I guess. Not a big Blackburn fan. I had the A's on the breakfast menu this morning when it wasn't Paul Blackburn. This line did not improve once it became Paul Blackburn. So I'm not super stoked about that. Although, I mean, I guess I liked it before. Now I don't like it, but the line is better. So, you could take it or leave it. Either way, I got a bad number given where it's going to close. So I don't have a ton of interest in Paul Blackburn, but you mentioned the Astros. And I think we don't need to dig into this. I'm going to rely a little bit more on the top stacks tool, which has them at the top of the heap. I don't have the same sort of scenario. So talk to me about what you're seeing for the Astros today.
Sure. Well, number one is I do rely quite a bit on the top stacks tool when I'm looking for which teams I want to stack. And they are right now, let's see, in terms of leverage, they are the second most positively leveraged offense on the slate, only behind the Atlanta Braves. And then that is on DraftKings. Over on FanDuel right now, we have Houston also being pretty positively leveraged, 7% ownership share, 10.2% chance to be a top stack of the day. So they are the third most positively leveraged stack over on FanDuel. So both sites, they look pretty favorable. And the pricing here is just incorrect on some of the core hitters. Most notably, Michael Brantley, only 3,900 today on DK. That is an egregiously low price. He's actually my highest owned individual hitter today. 13% ownership. I think that could use to be higher at that kind of price point on him. And then the pay up options, Yordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa. Those are always guys that are going to end up kind of making it in my player pool. And Carlos Correa, 9% owned today. Altuve, 6%. Yordan Alvarez, 12%. Just across the board, I think this is a pretty favorable looking price points for them. Aledmys Diaz, 3,400. So it's pretty easy to stack this team, mix in with a couple of the cheaper guys like Diaz, maybe Jake Myers, who's shown a little bit of power upside hitting towards the bottom of the order, also only picking up 5% ownership. And it's pretty viable to get, to me, one of the best offenses in baseball, stacking with some of the expensive pitchers we like.
So I have the Astros 7th overall, slightly over-owned, I guess, based on that information. And I think it's coming down to one major factor and probably one secondary factor. The biggest factor that I think is happening is that I think Brady Singer is better than it seems to be shown right now. And I think that he is helping to keep this Astros stack in check. And then 2, this is a terrible park for home run power, whether you're a righty or a lefty. I think those 2 factors are what are muting the Astros a little bit, because obviously I agree that the raw talent in this lineup is huge. I don't have any problem rostering anybody from the Astros. But in terms of the value that I'm getting, I have them a little bit lower, and it never makes me feel good to be on the opposite side of the top stack tool or where we're at. Like, I don't look at that and think, oh, this is probably me being smart. I generally assume that it's me being dumb. But I think that Brady Singer is the problem here. Do you like Brady Singer at all? Not necessarily from a DFS perspective, but do you have any individual thoughts on him?
All right, so there's a couple of things we could say. His 5.42 ERA is not indicative of who he is as a pitcher, because his underlying numbers are much better than that. 4.31 expected ERA, 3.87 FIP. His strikeout numbers have been decent this year. He's walking a lot of guys, but his luck-based numbers are really miserable this year. And it's just stuff that's out of his control. 367 BABIP, 65.4% strand rate. That's just a function of bad luck. And some of that's going to regress. At the same time, I'm going to look at some of his contact numbers right here. Because off the top of my head, I think he's somebody who gives up a good amount of hard contact. Let's see.
28% this year.
Yeah, no, it's pretty mediocre. So there's been some bad luck here, but even if you look at some of those other numbers, like a 4.31 expected ERA, you look at his ZiPS projection for the rest of the year, 4.47 expected ERA. He's been unlucky to have a 5.42 ERA, but even if you adjust those numbers for luck, it's not like he all of a sudden is a good pitcher. He's just a below average pitcher who's performing very poorly.
Yeah. I have a feeling the truth is going to end up lying somewhere in the middle, and that I would need to just slightly bump Singer, which would slightly bump the Astros, get them into that probably like the number 4 range. Things would look a little bit different. But for right now, I'm a little bit more muted on the Astros. I basically see all of these guys as properly owned. Like, I got Brantley in 13% of Sims. We've got him at 13.8% ownership. I'm pretty much in line here. My number 1 stack, actually, and they were in the ballpark of it yesterday. Man, I say in the ballpark way too much. That would be the Rays. This is a team that I've been getting to a lot as of late. They are my number 2 team overall, my number 3 team from a leverage perspective. They are 3rd in our top stack tool. They are showing some positive leverage. Are the Rays a team that you're getting to?
Yes. So they are, let's see, bring my lineups back up. I have 3 offenses that I'm stacking pretty heavily today, and they are the Astros, the White Sox, and the Rays. So those are the 3 teams that are appearing the most in my lineups today. So with Tampa Bay, it's twofold. It's not only that they get a good matchup today against Spencer Watkins, but it's also that the Orioles bullpen is terrible. So there's no point in the game where you're facing the Orioles that you're facing good pitching. They have a bad starting pitcher, and then it's just like, hey, here's a bunch of crappy relievers who are way worse than any other bullpen for any team in baseball for the most part. So it's going to be a favorable matchup for them top to bottom. The park, less than ideal at home for Tampa Bay at Tropicana Field, but still, we've seen the Orioles are capable of giving up a lot of runs to any offense at any point in time. So, yeah, given the current ownership data on the Rays, I think they are a team to get to for sure.
Okay, sweet. Well, then we're in the same park there. There it is again. Wander Franco, Austin Meadows, Arozarena, Choi, all these guys are pretty significantly under-owned, in my opinion. Only Brandon Lau is what I would consider to be over-owned. And in the leadoff spot against the Orioles with a 5.7 run implied total doesn't exactly break my heart if he ends up in some of my stacks. But even if you need to leave him off and go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're not going to see me complain one bit.
And
one other
I'm
team.
Getting, go ahead. I was going to say, I'm getting to a lot of the end of the guys, the lineup too, for value purposes. Like Kevin Kiermaier, I'm like 3x the field on. Francisco Mejia, I'm about double the field on. G-Man Choi, I'm double the field on. So a lot of these cheaper guys who are towards the end of the lineup, I don't really care that they're cheaper or that they're hitting towards the bottom of the lineup. These are guys who are making it into a lot of my lineups relative to their 2-3% ownership the field has.
Yeah, Mejia popped in 9% for me. We've got him at 4.7% ownership. I think he looks like a fantastic option at 3,200 for a catcher, particularly as a part of a 5-man Rays stack. Really cheapens the stack if you really want to go a different direction. Like if you do want to leave Lau off and turn that into Mejia, you fill your catcher spot at 3,200. I think that looks pretty good. One other team that I think needs at least a little bit of talk. They are and I want to make sure I get the number right. They're 9th overall, but they are my top leverage team. I want to see where they're at in the top stack tool. Also the top leverage team? Yes. Atlanta Braves taking on the Marlins. Jesus Luzardo on the opposite side. They get pulled up quite a bit for me because I just don't think that these guys are taking enough ownership. Albies, Soler, Freeman, Riley, Swanson, d'Arnaud, all of those guys are showing up as pretty aggressively under-owned. Do you like Atlanta at all?
They are my fourth most stacked team today. The only reason I'm not higher on them is because of the park. If they weren't playing in Miami, I'd feel better about it. But Jesus Luzardo is still a young pitcher who, for the future, I have some confidence in. He was a really highly regarded prospect. He's really good stuff. 95.9 average fastball velocity this year, but the results have just not been there, not only at the big league level, but even when he was sent down to the minor leagues this year, Luzardo really struggled. So with the A's, when he was in the AAA system, he made 8 starts in AAA, had a 6.52 ERA, a 5.57 expected ERA. Then you look at his big league numbers this year, 7.52 ERA, 5.35 expected ERA. There's still talent there. The Marlins do a really good job of developing pitchers, so I think they'll be able to help him turn it around. But it's just not there as of right now. Zips has a project for a 4.74 ERA the rest of the year, and that might even be a little bit optimistic. So looking through this Braves lineup and how much right-handed power they have in it, I think this is definitely a team that's going a little bit under-owned, and they're also a team that is a fairly high priority for me. There's not one individual hitter who I'm getting to like 15% or anything like that, but there's a bunch of guys who are like 2% owned that are like 7% for me. Adam Duvall, Travis d'Arnaud, Austin Riley, he's a little bit higher owned, but still I'm overweight to him slightly. Ozzy Albies, another one. Jorge Soler, who's a great right-handed power hitter. There's a lot of guys from the right side of the plate here that I think could definitely get to Luzardo a little bit.
I'm with you. And they are really easy to stack. Like, let's just say you want to go 1 through 5. Second base, outfield, first, third, short. You're covering all of your infield bases. You could swap out one of those guys, add d'Arnaud in the 6th spot, get another catcher. You're not just filling immediately with outfield bats and then trying to pick and choose on the infield. You're getting a very easy stack, which allows you to get some really legitimate one-off options in the outfield, guys that might have a better power profile for the day. So I should go put a Braves jersey on, given the way that I'm standing for them today, considering those are the only jerseys I'd have in my closet. But I do have one Phillies sort of jacket type thing, and I guess we need to talk about them a little bit. The Phillies have a pretty sizable top stack odd. They are sizable in fact that they are at the top, but they are also massively overowned to the tune of the biggest negative leverage team on the slate. What do we do with the Philadelphia Phillies here against the Diamondbacks?
Yes, I mean, these are spots for me personally, and we don't have any crazy ownership spots on today's slate. You know, there's not like one team who it's like, this team has 5% chance to be a top stack and 15% ownership. There's nothing that's that crazy overowned, but relative to the field, I'm pretty light on the Phillies today. I have them at less than half the ownership the field has. So it's a team that whenever there's any one squad's picking up this much ownership on this big of a slate, I'm just going to end up being underweight to them. Not to the point where I'm fading them entirely, but I only have a few Philly stacks.
I'm in the same agreement as the top stack tool. They are my top stack and they are dead last in leverage. This is a team that I'd like to fill out my lineups for. I think they pair well with the Braves. If you have a 5-man Brave stack, grabbing a Philly or 2 makes a lot of sense to me because I do think they're in the best spot. But to go to a 5-man is just going to have me competing with a lot of the same people. Jordan Klein with the poll in chat right now. Who's your favorite stack on the slate? Rays pulling the most answers right now. Phillies, Astros, and Rays are on there. Other pulling 32%. So keep voting in that poll and hit the thumbs up. We're at 165. I think 200 is in our sights. I don't have a Robert De Niro face to make like Gundacker if we get to 200, but just assume that I do. I don't want to try to do that on the stream. Otherwise, I know that it's going to become an Awesemo meme moving forward, and I'm not ready to put myself in that situation right now. But I do like the call of the Rays there. Phillies and Astros pulling a little bit less. Any other stacks that we're missing? Anybody else we should be touching on?
I just wanted to see, because Alex had posted in the chat that he updated the projection for Paul Blackburn. And I just want to refresh the top stacks tool to see if that made any kind of change in terms of how the White Sox are being viewed. We have them as a little bit more positively leveraged now. They're already positive leverage, but now even more so. Do them with a 5% ownership share, 6.6% chance to be a top stack. So I might be a little bit high on them given that information, but I'm so low on Paul Blackburn that I'm fine with keeping it as is what I have.
And let me grab that most recent ownership run, which happened 7 minutes ago. I don't think there's going to be major changes, but it's always good to have the most up-to-date information. You never know what's going to change and impact the rest of your lineups. But Philly's still at the top. Any changes in my ordinal rankings? No, everything still sort of looks the same. I guess I should mention that I think the Orioles have a little bit of leverage and are under-owned, but at the same time, they are not highly ranked for me. I just want to put that out there that they do exist today. That's the best way that I can say it because I'm not really comfortable with it. 3.3 run implied total for the Orioles, at least just based on the data that I have. I think it should be more like 4. I think the offense is a little bit better than they're getting credit for, but at the same time, still pretty bad and not a lot going on in the arms department, whether it's Watkins or one of the other bums that they'll toss out there once Watkins gets blown up.
I tried to get to some Orioles and obviously if I really wanted to, I could just make it happen. But I had set Fantasy Cruncher to give me a small percentage of race stacks and it ultimately ended up giving me 0 of them, which I'm fine with. They're just a team that didn't make it into my player pool. I'm always a little hesitant to roster some of these offenses in bullpen games. The Rays have a really strong bullpen. They're going to be facing a different mix of left and right-handed pitching. Sometimes it leads to pinch hit situations. So for me, I didn't get to Baltimore. They are low-owned, but pretty good reason for them being low-owned. They only have 1.7% chance to be the top-scoring team in our top stacks tool, and they're playing in the Tropicana field. It's a pitcher-friendly park, and then probably going to be facing a lot of high-leverage relievers.
Yeah, not going to go well, as best I could tell. Any other stacks that you want to touch on?
Let's see. What are some of the other ones that are really negatively leveraged? Here's another one. Seattle is another team that I am way under the field on based on and I'm going to lower them a little bit based on the most recent run of ownership we did. But yeah, Seattle right now, 12.7% projected ownership to 8.2% top stack odds. So that's another team I want to be pretty heavily underweight to the field on. The spot for them, it's not that it's bad, but Seattle themselves don't have a great offense. And there's a couple of spots that I usually get wary of. That is bad offenses are picking up a lot of ownership and bad pitchers are picking up a lot of ownership. I understand why it happens. It's, a lot of times because going up against bad pitchers or bad offenses, and it kind of causes the field to pick a side. But when Seattle's that popular, it's never really a situation I want to get to. A lot of times I will try to roster the pitcher against those stacks for a little bit of leverage, but I don't really want to roster Mike Fulton-Avich either.
No, not so much. Yeah, I have the Mariners 4th overall, but the second biggest negative leverage stack. So looking pretty similar to the top stack tool right now. I'm definitely in agreement that I'm not trying to get to any Mariners. Well, that all sounds good. So let's talk a little bit about promos because we've got a lot going on. We'll start with the most important one. That is free soccer. The English Premier League is back. We have soccer projections. If you want to try them out, use the promo code FREESOCCER, one big word. You'll get a week of Awesemo Plus Soccer for free. Do that, enter lineups, use Liverpool players, and print money as far as I'm concerned, because anytime you touch anything for Liverpool, it turns into gold. Now, if you want the actual promo that most people will care about, that would be Blitz, BLITZ. It is 25% off an Awesemo Plus annual pass for the NFL. We don't do annual discounts all that frequently. To get 25% off is a major, major discount. And if you are expecting to play NFL DFS, if you're expecting to subscribe to us for your NFL content, there is no reason to not use this code out of the gate. You're going to save a lot of money over the course of the season. You're getting projections, ownership, top stacks, premium slack, and more. Don't miss out. Use that promo code. But that's not it for fantasy football stuff. The fantasy football draft kit for season-long and best ball leagues is live. Same projections, tools, and analysis that we use for all of our NFL DFS stuff, but you get the draft wingman, which keep your eyes peeled. I am definitely going to be doing a video highlighting that. I love that tool. I built a super generic version of that thing like 6 years ago for my wife so that she can do fantasy football drafts. This is visually appealing and works significantly better. I have no use in using mine any longer. You should definitely be using Draft Wingman. We've got best ball rankings, stack rankings, trade value charts, and more. You'll get a $35 credit for Underdog and FFPC leagues if you sign up and use the promo code WR at checkout. You'll save you get 33% off. It's basically less than $10 for everything we offer for season long in best ball. Don't miss out. I assume Jordan had it up on the screen at this point, but maybe he didn't. I don't know. You will see a link from Nightbot, so make sure you're clicking that. Whew, a lot going on, man. A lot of premium content being offered at a discount right now.
So there's something you kind of touched on there that I really do want to follow up and ask you about. Who is your wife playing in a fantasy football league? Because I imagine that she's playing with like 9 of her girlfriends for like $20, and you spent like hours building something for her to draft optimally with.
Okay, so twofold. Yes, you're spot on. It is a league with her friends. Draft this Saturday, by the way. So my house is going to be a war zone.
Plug that, yeah.
Yeah. If anybody wants to come over, that's fine. And I don't mean that to YouTube chat. I mean like people I work with. You crazies are never allowed to come to my house. Originally, I built it for myself, but I put bumpers on it basically so that she could use it. She doesn't know anything about football. She still doesn't. 7 years later into this league, I don't think she can name 4 people that were on her team last year. So it did its job. It, ranked everybody positionally, weighted everybody against each other, used some ADP. It gave her the opportunity to have a chance and definitely draft better than everybody else out of the gate. The problem is these girls get absolutely wrecked for this draft. So by the time they get to round like 8 or 9, Katie gets a couple typos into Excel and the entire tool is just shot. I think Draft Wingman would make that go a lot smoother. So I am going to transition her to Draft Wingman for Saturday and save myself the headache because it's not going to get me anywhere. But yes, more than $20 though. I think they bumped it to like 50 or 60 over the years. So it's a non-small amount. They pay out for like first place in the regular season or like most points overall. Second place gets something. I don't know. They pay out a lot of people. You basically you really got to try to not make money back. It's awful. It's awful. Anyway.
Perfect length of explanation. That was just enough time for me to upload the what I hope is the final version of my lineups.
Well, as you know, I tend to be long-winded when I need to explain something. So I bought you as much time as I could because now it is time to talk individual positions. Are you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Alrighty, we're going to start at catcher. What I want from you is this. I want your preferred cash game catcher and your favorite GPP option.
Ooh, okay. I like this. All right. So for GPP, this is the player I have the most exposure to, Travis d'Arnaud. I have him in well over the 4.9% of lineups that the field has. So I have him nearly 3x the field. d'Arnaud is my favorite catcher. For cash games, I think I would probably go to Yoel Pozo. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, solely based on he's batting 5th and he's min price. And that's something always favorable about catchers to me.
Bean Dude says, my wife drafts people who are smiling in their Yahoo picks, which is outstanding. Justin Wilson says, my girlfriend won March Madness 3 years ago based on pretty colors. So yeah, we go a little bit further than that. That's why I built that tool out, because ultimately I want her to win. The team name is Engleman's Elite. I can't have her besmirch my name. Not that it's not also her name, but still, she was Wilson's winners. She picked up her first victory once she became Engleman's Elite. So there is that. Let's move it on. Let me hit you with my catcher. So I think JT Realmuto is probably the preferred cash option, pulling a ton of ownership. He is at the top of my list at 4,900. GPP wise, Francisco Mejia, 3,200. He is my third ranked catcher and the biggest gap between where I have them in my sims to ownership. So Mejia would be the guy that I'd be looking to get to in a GPP if I were running some sort of chalky build already. First base, same question. Go.
For cash games, I think the answer is pretty easily Anthony Rizzo, just underpriced at 3,600. Yankees offense is almost always going to be in a good spot. The pricing just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. If you look at the historical pricing for Rizzo, he's been very consistently over 5K recently. During his time with the Yankees, also hit the ball fairly well. But the last time he was priced under 4,700 was August 1st, and that was a game in Miami against Sandy Alcantara. So Anthony Rizzo, given his ownership at 16.4%, he's going to be very popular in cash games. He would be my cash game play. For tournaments, Bobby Dahlback. He's sitting towards the end of the lineup, but he's going up against Andrew Heaney, who gives up a lot of hard contact, a lot of homers. So Bobby Dahlback at that price point, he's somebody for tournaments I like.
I appreciate you saying Alcantara instead of that Alcantara nonsense that Adam is constantly spewing. Can't stand it. Anyway, Rizzo is the correct answer. Top of the heap for me in general, top of the heap in ownership. All signs converge on Anthony Rizzo being the preferred cash game option. I guess I've got 2 for GPPs. You take it or leave it, whichever one you need. Freddie Freeman and Ji-Man Choi basically projected the same for me. Freeman at 4,800, Choi at 3,900. They showed up in 8% of lineups for me. They're both owned in like the 4 to 5% range. So that's the biggest gap. Most likely to go to for GPPs. Second base.
All right. So for the cash game play, I guess I say Brandon Lau here. It's a little tricky because Trey Turner has second base and shortstop eligibility. But for the purpose of somebody who's just second base, I'm going to say Brandon Lau because I think I'm going to say Trey Turner at shortstop, although I'll also say that Didi Gregorius is another viable option at shortstop. But for the purpose of second base, I'm going to say Brandon Lau as the cash game play. For tournament purposes, it is Ozzie Albies for me.
Love it. I agree with the Turner, Brandon Lau takes. They are the 2 options to me at the top of the list. Ozzie Albies is my number 3, and he is under-owned, so we're in agreement there. Gianni Hernandez as well, 2,400, I think is a bit under-owned. I would be happy to go that direction too. Very different kind of play. That's a salary savings play in a GPP, whereas with Albies, you're paying $5K, more than double Gianni Hernandez. But we are very much in agreement at second base. The question is, will we be in agreement at third base?
Maybe. Actually, I feel like not. I feel like I'm actually pretty confident we're not going to be because Aledmys Diaz is my favorite GPP option at third base. Actually, I like him enough. I'd be fine with him in cash games and GPPs given what his price point is. I know you didn't like the Astros as much as me, but he's one of my higher individually owned hitters.
No issue with him in cash games. I think that's fine. Kyle Seager, my highest ranked third baseman and the highest owned guy. So I think that he is the most likely scenario from a cash perspective. Rafael Devers at 5,400 is my top GPP option. Shows up in 9% of lineups, only 4% owned. You're paying for it at that point, 5,400. And I guess I could mention once again, Gianni Hernandez at 2,400, 2 very different guys. I am a little bit lower on Diaz, but we've hashed out why I think that I'm a little bit lower on the Astros. Don't really have much of a problem with it. He still grades out pretty well, but I think he's more properly owned than under-owned. Yeah. All right, so we hit catcher, we hit first, we hit second, we hit third. So now we should hit the presenting sponsor of the show, which is Jock Market. Jock Market has changed it up a little bit. It's not normal fantasy sports. It's more of a stock exchange, which is kind of fun. You and I took a pretty good deep dive into Jock Market during the NBA season, but for baseball, look, you don't have to worry about waiting until the end of the game to get paid out. And you can be playing NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA contests, but you're buying and selling shares of players in real time for real money. So you can buy into someone in their pre-IPO phase, you get a couple shares, and, let's say the first at-bat doesn't go all that well. You could sell those shares off immediately after the at-bat. Try to sell yourself out of it if you don't think it's going to go. If something changed, if you saw the dude, roll an ankle or something, you can try to get out of that as quick as possible, and maybe somebody else will pick up those shares, or vice versa. You could try to buy into someone that you think is going to finish a little bit higher. You can do all of that from the comfort of your couch while you're watching all of these games. Download the app in the App Store. Use the promo code Awesemo. That is exclusive to us. Also, if anybody else is using the promo code Awesemo, I think that we're probably going to have a bit of a problem with it. But you can get up to a $50 bonus on your first deposit. Again, it's just for the Awesemo community to get that bonus. So use that promo code when you download the app and get up to a $50 bonus for Jock Market. And while you're here, 14 more likes to get to 200. I shouldn't have to ask again. That number should be 200 by the time I basically finish this long-winded sentence of me catching up with the video, since we're on like an 8-second delay. So go ahead and do that. I won't look back at it as we continue to talk positions. Who is your cash and GPP preferred options at shortstop?
All right, so shortstop, there's two options here. There's Trey Turner, there's Didi Gregorius. It's basically just going to be, to me, how much salary savings you need, because to me, both of them are really strong plays. For cash games, they're also going to be pretty popular in tournaments. For tournament purposes, I have three guys that I'm overweight to that I think are all very similar as tournament options, and that is Carlos Correa, Tim Anderson, and Dansby Swanson. They're all pay-up options at shortstop. I think they're all a little bit under-owned. It's kind of hard for me to differentiate between them. If I have to pick one, I'm going to say Correa right now, just because the Astros are the team I have the most exposure to as a stack. But yeah, I think shortstop's a pretty loaded position today.
Yeah, I agree. Turner and Gregorius are the two guys you're probably looking for in cash games. If you have the money, you go to Turner. If you don't, you go to Gregorius. They're separated by $2,100. So that makes it pretty easy. Anyway, if we're talking about GPP options, Wander Franco, 5,300 to me is my top GPP option. He is 5% owned. I have him at 10%. No problem with the shout for Correa or Tim Anderson. I think those guys are both pretty highly ranked as well. I don't have anybody else to add. I do think Didi Gregorius is over owned, but that doesn't really matter so much for a cash game when you're 3,300.
No, certainly the price is too low, and he's a good value.
Closing it out with outfielders. Feel free to give me as many as you want for either category. Anybody that stands out to you.
All right. Michael Brantley, I'd said before, he's my most rostered hitter today. Cash games, GPPs, no issue with Michael Brantley. I'm kind of surprised that at his price point in this matchup that he's not picking up more ownership. Brantley's been a really good hitter this year. He's only 3,900 on DK. Ownership 11% is pretty modest, especially when considering there's 3 outfield spots. Him for cash games and tournaments. Other guys, Nelson Cruz definitely stands out for cash games and tournaments. Just as a cash game play, probably a little bit too popular to get crazy with them in tournaments, but Odubel Herrera. And then as a GPP play, Jake Myers, 2,200 hitting for the Astros. He's had a lot of success. He's getting called up from minor leagues. He had strong minor league numbers, and his price has never gone up. So no ownership and no real salary to note here. We've got Jake Myers, 2,200 on DK. So he's my cheap tournament option I'm most overweight to.
I was with you for Brantley, Cruz, Herrera. Herrera in particular, I think, is probably a guarantee for one of those spots, just given the fact that he's 3,300 hitting leadoff and pulling that ownership. Bryce Harper is the most owned outfielder right now at 6K. So if you're getting to him, I don't think that's crazy. It's going to depend on salary moving down the line. If I'm shouting out GPP options, Austin Meadows is at the top of the heap. I have him 4th overall. He's in single digits for ownership. Joey Gallo, Eloy Jimenez, Soler, Stanton, Austin Hayes, just some of the options I'm willing to use as one-offs for outfielders.
Oh, I have to do this.
I
have to do this too. Because Adam did this the other day. He put the hex on Connor Joe and called him like one of the worst plays on the slate. And it was ownership based. And then also we kind of made fun of Connor Joe for potentially not being a good hitter, but of course, field anything could happen. But here's my Connor Joe play of the day. Somebody's picking up a lot of ownership that I am not on, that I'm gonna put the jinx on. We'll then homer afterwards. That is Justin Upton. So Justin Upton, who's picking up 17% ownership right now on DK, is a cheap price point, but for the most part, Justin Upton, even though he homered yesterday, he has not been good for a considerable amount of time. And the Angels as a stack, I always find them hard to get to when Ohtani pitches anyway, just because you lose Ohtani's bat in the lineup, which always makes them look less appealing. But Justin Upton last 3 years, 103 WRC plus, 94, 90. He's just an average to below average hitter at this point in his career. So Justin Upton, too much ownership for me.
Justin Upton is my most over-owned outfielder on the slate today. So I have no problem whatsoever with your Justin Upton take. William Fields with the super chat, a second baseman around 3,800, please.
DK or FanDuel?
I'm moving forward with DK until I'm told differently.
I assume DK because 3,800 for FanDuel would be pretty much anybody.
On DK is the second super chat from William Fields.
Oh, perfect. All right. So 3,800. That's a pretty weird price point.
Ramon Urias for me is probably the guy, although Yanni Hernandez is the guy that shows up in most lineups.
3,800. So the answer is Gianni Hernandez for me. He's the guy in that price range. I have under that salary, I have the most exposure to. The thing is, he's 2,400. So, you have the money to spend elsewhere. The answer is Gianni Hernandez for me anyway, but then just, use the rest of the salary to pay off somewhere else.
Gianni Hernandez is the guy that I have projected the highest Tommy Edman is the answer if you're trying to spend the most of your salary there.
Yeah, I have 0 lineups with Tommy Edman today.
And then super chat from Peter Hanley, just to say thanks. I think you left that decimal point in the wrong spot. Don't be afraid to bump that 2 spots to the right, given your success as of late. But no, all jokes aside, seriously, thank you very much for it. Congrats to everything you've been doing. It's been great to see you at the top of every contest every day for what seems like the entire summer.
The first ever DFS billionaire, Peter Hanley. So congrats, buddy.
Love it. All right, home run pick. Who dongs today?
Let's see. I'm going to do this a couple ways. Number one, I'm going to look through my exposure, but I'm still going to bring up our MLB player props tool so I can do one based on what the current betting odds are, because the MLB player props tool, always a nice free tool to use over at Awesemo.com. So while that's loading, I'm going to go through my exposures and see who it would be best for me to homer today. I am going to say Michael Brantley. I've already talked about how much I like Michael Brantley, cash games, GPPs. He's my most individually owned hitter today. So Michael Brantley, the spot against Brady Singer. I know that we think that Brady Singer has been a little bit unlucky this year, but still overall I'm stacking the Astros a pretty good amount. And Brantley's one of my favorite hitters on the slate.
Let's see. You said Brantley, right?
Yeah.
Michael Brantley is not high in this for me right now. 115 of 172.
Well, you're wrong.
I might just be. Hey, look, the last time I was on a show with somebody taking a lot of guys in the hundreds of my home run model, that gentleman's name was Chris Randone, and look how well his life is going at this point.
By the way, I would not bet on Michael Brantley to homer today, and yeah, I don't think he's super likely to homer. I just have him in more lineups than the field does, and I felt in the nature of what we're doing, I felt obligated to give him out. That's fair.
That's fair. I will go ahead and so Hunter Renfroe is at the top of the heap for me, basically tied with Ohtani. None of those picks are going to be the picks that I'm going with. I want to go with someone that is pulling no ownership whatsoever. Matt Olson would be that guy. He shows up 4th, but that doesn't feel like too heroic of a choice, nor do some of the names coming up immediately after him, like JD, Devers, or Stanton. So where's somebody that doesn't seem like someone that would normally get picked?
That's always hard about the home run pick, is because, back, like, I don't want to be like when we do the 100 yards and a touchdown, Spag's just like, hey, how about Derrick Henry this week? How about Dalvin?
Christian McCaffrey.
Because it's like, oh, Fernando Tatis at Coors Field, that's who I'm going to pick. So I always try to do it as somebody who's like, hey, here's a hitter that I think is in a pretty good spot that I'm overweight to the field. I also don't just want to pick, some massive chalk hitter.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm looking for a guy that I am heavier on than everybody else.
Oh, I have a real answer for you while you're looking that up. Yordan Alvarez is a hitter I'm overweight to the field on that has a very legitimate chance to homer.
I'm not going to try to talk you out of anything like that. Obviously, he's fantastic. Let's go Austin Meadows. He's a guy that I am significantly higher on than the field shows up. Where's Meadows hiding? Okay, that's a perfect spot. 23rd in my home run model, and I have him under-owned by half. I have him in 14% of optimals, only at 7% ownership. That feels like the call that I'm looking for. What up, Spencer Watkins? Good luck to you today.
And here's the betting call that we can use to finish is
nice.
Somebody we're both going to like, because we like this stack a little bit. Freddie Freeman is plus 625 to homer today. That is the number one pick for betting purposes in our model. Plus 625 for Freddie Freeman to homer.
Freeman showing up 61st in the model today. And getting ignored because of the lefty-lefty matchup and the park. So go Freeman. All right, here we go. William Fields with another super chat. Use the extra salary to pick up Adam Duvall. Who the hell is he? How does he have 27 dongs? Good pick or no? Yeah. I mean, yes and no for today, at least. Like, it's not a great park for it. Adam Duvall shows up in 40th in my home run model. So like, I have no problem going to Duvall if you just had extra salary. I don't know who it was coming from, but I assume Duvall is a better option. Today isn't necessarily the best day for Adam Duvall, but it's neither here nor there.
I'm way overweight to him. I mean, relative to the ownership the field has, the field is only rostering him, 2.5% of the time. I have Adam Duvall in 7% of my lineup. So relative to that, and the fact we both like Brave stacks, the spot in the lineup isn't ideal for him, but he's probably one of the more likely low-owned hitters to homer today.
I'm not sure that I love him as a one-off as much as I would like him as a part of the Brave stack. Just because I think that you could utilize that a little bit better.
I feel the opposite because Adam Duvall, almost all his production comes from home runs. So he's somebody I actually do like as a one-off quite a bit because he's kind of his production is kind of independent from stacks anyway.
Like I think I would rather go to Soler than Duvall, even though he's a little bit more owned, just because you get that better spot in the order. If I had to go to a piece of that game, otherwise, there's not really anybody in that range that's all that interesting. McCutchen, I guess. Robbie Grossman, I guess, would be fine in those spots at around that price tag. Not that again, there's not a huge problem with Duvall. The 7 spot in the order in this park is sort of what's putting me off of him.
Yeah, I'm looking. Who else in that price range do I have exposure to today at outfield? It's Duvall, Jorge Soler. I'm pretty similar on both of them. Yeah, I'm good with Duvall though.
Okay. Well, 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go until lock. If you've got any questions, feel free to get them in Premium Slack, YouTube chat. We will try to get them in the next 3 minutes. We're still waiting, I believe, on Pirates and Dodgers lineups, although I don't even think we technically have a Dodgers starter, so no surprise that the lineup isn't in yet.
Are you going to do anything with the, let's see, what are we expecting from, I'm just looking online to see if there's anybody who's like expected to start or what DraftKings has.
Mitch White is the expected starter.
Let's see what his pitch count has been recently.
I have him in for 3 2/3 innings, and he showed up in 9% of lineups when I ran my sims.
I might add him into my player pool if he officially gets named the starter, just from the standpoint of he's 6,000. He's pitching against the Pirates. His last 2 starts, 58, 59 pitches. So probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 pitches from him. If I just get somebody who's really cheap that the field is not going to roster, because when do we get a starting pitcher that isn't named until after lock? I think that he's somebody who, if I get to like 5% of him, I think I'll be happy with that.
I think the thing that I'm looking it up now just to see if it exists. Doesn't appear that it does. I think that I like the Pirates on the run line today. So I wanted to check and see if that's actually the case.
I bet the Cubs earlier.
+1.5, +110. Yeah, I would happily take the Pirates. It's not as big of a gap as I was truly expecting. But you can get +235 on the Pirates, just straight money line for this one. I think the fair line is like +196, so I'd be okay with it. You bet the Cubs earlier, you said?
I'm going to have such ugly baseball bets down the stretch of the season because so many of these teams just suck at this point. But then the lines, like there's no baseball game that is that wide of odds. And the Cubs are like, really, they're going up against Tyler Mahle, who's been fairly terrible over the last month, and they're +265 underdogs. And there's just going to be a lot of spots where like, hey, I'm betting the Orioles today. I'm betting the Cubs because they're like 3-1 underdogs, which should almost never be the case for baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of the stance that Ben was taking today on the breakfast menu by taking the Orioles, getting a 1.5 at plus significant money. 1 more minute to go. Let's see what else we got. Eric Johnson says, yeah, Josh likes Pitt too. I mean, that's not really the words that came out of my mouth. I just think that they should be +196 instead of +235. And there's some value there, but like is relative, I guess. Tierra Butler, any Phillies love? I mean, they're the best stack on the slate, but they're over-owned. So take that information for what it's worth. Why is it when I'm drunk, I see 2 of Josh and 1 of Greg?
I don't know. That seems like a you problem.
Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, you're definitely seeing 2 of the better one.
Yeah, go to your ophthalmologist and I'll explain that situation. We're not doctors. We can't answer these questions.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you probably need to go to a doctor other than an eye doctor, given that sort of problem. But either way, we are locked. PGA Live Before Lock coming up in a half hour. Greg, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Woo.
Yes. Go figure out if it's Ric Flair or not Ric Flair. Good luck tonight in your MLB lineups. We will talk to you again tomorrow with all of the same content we normally have. Strategy shows, deeper dives, live before locks, all that good stuff. It all happens again tomorrow. I lost my words, but good luck.